Brandon Higgins.
And it's Ashley I, and we're the hosts of the Almost Famous podcast.
I was the Bachelor, and know firsthand how dating 25 people at one time is not easy.
And I was on the show a time or two, or four, but I met my husband, so I'm proof that the process works.
We do interviews with the cast members creating the headlines.
And we know pretty much everyone, so we're a reliable source.
Listen to Almost Famous on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey everybody, this is Jill Scott, and I am pleased to introduce you to J.Ill, the podcast. I am joined by my amazing, brilliant girlfriends, Laia St. Clair.
What up, though?
And Aja Graydon Dantzler.
Hey, y'all.
We are going to be talking about a lot of amazing things like individuality,
Family and blackness.
listen when you're on your long drive home. Listen when you're shopping at the grocery store. But listen to J.Ill, the podcast, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening to the Herd Podcast. Be sure to catch us live every weekday from 12 to 3 Eastern, 9 to noon Pacific on Fox Sports Radio and FS1. Find your local station for the Herd at foxsportsradio.com or stream us live every day on the iHeartRadio app by searching Herd.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio.
Oh, it is Thursday. What a day. It is great to have you in live in Los Angeles. This is The Herd. Wherever you may be and however you may be listening, Fox Sports Radio, iHeartRadio, and FS1. I had a tremendous night of sleep, hydrated, watched the NBA draft, hugely excited for the Seahawks Arizona tonight, the Pacific Northwest. Joy Taylor, how are you?
I'm great. It's funny, like, getting a good night's sleep at one point in your life becomes a very exciting thing.
I mean,
Like, at one point in your life, going out to the bar is very exciting,
Yeah.
and then getting a good night's sleep is just exciting. And I had a big realization last night.
that you like the NBA draft as much as I like high school football recruiting.
Yeah, like, I'm how you are such a nerd about recruiting for the NFL. That's how I am for the NBA.
Yeah, well, like we're one percenters. But everybody's got something they're into that nobody else is. My wife can play jigsaw puzzles all week, and I'm like, I don't get it.
Yeah, like, I love the Heat's pick. I love Nico Mannion to the Warriors. Point guard at 48. This is steal. RJ Hampton's going to the Bucks. I love all of it.
Well, let's start with this. So the NBA draft, it didn't used to be this way, but, you know, life changes. This year, 2020, is the year of change. The NBA draft now, all of it, is now a developmental draft. The NBA draft now is a developmental draft. These are all startups. A lot of potential for some of these startups, but they'll probably only be one or two Ubers. You know what happens to angel investors and startups? Most disappear into the ether or fail quickly. That is what the draft is. Ask yourself this: what sport do we bet the most? NFL. What sport do we play more fantasy with? Football. NFL. What sport has the fewest games and creates the most urgency? The games matter more. NFL. Fact. All three of those are what? They create emotion. And emotion is what drives us to a television set. The NBA ratings have been on a 10-year slide. It's politics. Oh, come on. Can you stop your agenda? Hockey ratings got hit the worst this year. They didn't do politics. Baseball playoffs took it in the chin. They didn't do much politics. The Masters golf rating was the lowest since 1957. They didn't do politics. Maybe the politics didn't help the NBA. The NBA's got a bigger problem. Who are these guys? Joy loves them. 1% of people do. I think it's great. I like high school football recruiting. Who are they? Last night I'm watching the NBA draft. I'm a sportscaster. It's become the baseball draft. You ever watch a baseball draft? You're like, oh, I remember that guy at the College World Series, the Vanderbilt pitcher. There'll be like 3 guys a year in the baseball draft. I'm like, oh, he played at Vanderbilt. It's always like Southern baseball. Oh, he was LSU third baseman. Last night, not a lot of Duke guys or Gonzaga guys or UCLA guys. I'm rooting for the kid from Tel Aviv. I think it's amazing the story of these Nigerian families and the players. I think it's amazing. But I don't know them. And then they disappear to bad. The stars in this draft, go in the top 8 picks, they go to bad teams don't make the playoffs, and those kids disappear into the NBA ether. By the way, the good teams don't want the players. Golden State Warriors, reportedly. My favorite player was James Wiseman. They're going to look to move him. They want to win now. LeBron James a few years ago could have had Andrew Wiggins. He's like, nah, give me Kevin Love. I want to win playoff games now. So the good teams and the good players. I've been saying this for years. The NFL understands the value of college football. The NBA rolls its eyes at college basketball. The only reason I knew Zion outside of some internet photos and videos because of Duke. I learned his personality and I loved him. I saw his smile. I saw him break through shoes. I loved Zion. I mean, we talked about him. I was talking about him when he's 19. If not for Duke, he's just an internet sensation. There's like 8,000 of those created every day on Instagram and YouTube. But then I met him, and I saw him smile, and I heard him talk, and how much he loved Duke, and he broke through the shoes, and he refused to not, I'm going to play again. I love this sport. Well, I love you, and now it's why I watch you. And Zion's first NBA game was a summer league game, and he broke a television rating. And then he played in the NBA, and they put him on Christmas, and he got a rating. The more you bet, the more you know, the more you care, the more you watch. The NFL has never rolled its eyes at college football. They understand it's a free marketing platform. Anybody listening or watching this show, if you were starting a business today, and you don't have a ton of money, but you start a small business. Joey and I, we're going to start businesses. If I said to you, hey, I'm going to give you 2 free years of marketing, you'd be like, okay, I'll take it. Every company in the world is looking for free marketing. That's what college basketball is. You don't even pay for it. That's what college football is. We have demonized college basketball. It's the only reason I know who Zion is. I'm not asking the kids to stay there for 4 years, 3, 2. But 1 isn't the end of the world. By the way, the top of the NFL draft last year, here's where the players came from. LSU, Ohio State, Georgia, Bama, Oregon, Auburn, Clemson, Florida, and Alabama. I watched them all for 3 years. I'm rooting for them. I'm rooting against them. I've got an emotional connection. Everybody's got their agenda with politics. Nobody's watching the NBA because of politics. The NBA's been on a 9 to 10 year slide. There was no Black Lives Matter 10 years ago, 9 years ago, 8 years ago, 7 years ago, 6 years ago, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago. And the ratings were going down. I'm not blaming the kids. Stop demonizing college basketball. It's a free platform. Go for a year. Meet kids you'd never meet otherwise. Or go to the G League. Yuck. Nothing against it, but if LeBron James would have gone to Carolina for 1 year, I bet you today, and he's been the empowerment player in our league, I bet you today, he would have the coolest memories of North Carolina. Zion will never be able to duplicate Duke. He may bounce around the NBA. LeBron's been on a bunch of teams. But you go back and ask Michael Jordan about Carolina. He goes there constantly. He gives money to the program. He was connected to Dean Smith to the end. He's connected to Roy Williams. I'm not saying you have to stay there forever, but this idea that college basketball is just bad for the NBA is nonsense. Last night, it's just a developmental draft. Maybe one of those kids will be uber, but most will disappear into the fabric. 2 years from now, we'll be talking about other guys we didn't watch and don't know who they are. Good luck to all of them. I am rooting for them. Okay, so it is, I'll just tell you right now, I probably shouldn't say this. It's bad for my ratings. It's a really bad week to bet football. It's a lousy NFL number week. I've already made my 3 biggest NFL bets. I did it on Monday, and the lines have all gotten worse. The best bet of the week remaining may be tonight, and it's Seattle. Seattle over Arizona. And I know what you're saying. Oh, Colin, you're crazy. You're a crazy old man. Kyler Murray's amazing. But everything changes for Kyler Murray tonight. That win over Buffalo and Miami. Come on, man. You didn't watch those games. 75% of the country did not get those games beamed into their local network affiliate. You watched them on highlights. Tonight's national TV. Kyler Murray this week is getting MVP talk. We didn't get that before this week. Oh, by the way, he's now division lead against the rival Hawks, can pull away. Tonight is a microscope. Tonight is pressure. Tonight is expectations. Look at the people he's up with in the MVP odds. Mahomes, Super Bowl and an MVP. Russell Wilson, Rodgers, Brady, Super Bowls MVPs. Kyler Murray, career record 11 and 13 and 1, and I like him a lot. Tonight is his first moment. I mean, real moment, not regional TV. And this is what Hail Marys do. I mean, this is what they do. They take spectacular talent to MVP of the league, he and Mahomes and Russell Wilson. And I'm not saying he's not gifted. But if you don't think pressure matter, if you don't think expectations change the game, you're crazy. You know how many guys I've seen fold on golf courses? How many quarterbacks I've seen fold in fourth quarters? The NFL is about steps. Now, the good news for Kyler is to go from 5 and 11 to the MVP. We saw it with Mahomes and we saw it with Lamar. And if not for an injury, we would have seen it with Carson Wentz. You can go from young guy, rookie year, chop it up a little, and then you're the MVP. And I will say this for Kyler, whereas the NBA draft was 30 prospects, the NFL draft now is no prospects. When Joe and I were growing up, the NFL first round was starters, but the quarterbacks were always, they'll sit for a while. Yeah, that's over. Like, that's over, and they're all good early. So I think Kyler will be good tonight. But Arizona's been outplayed for 3 weeks in a row at home, and they've won 2 of them. Now they go to Seattle. Kyler's being talked about as an MVP. Seattle's lost 3 of 4. It's the biggest game in 2 years for the Seahawks. Pete Carroll's going to the Hall of Fame. Russell Wilson's going to the Hall of Fame. And here comes the young kid up to the cold, frigid, wet weather of the Northwest. Really like Seattle tonight a lot. All right, coming up. I think it is amazing what the Ball family's done. It's amazing. To have a child drafted is amazing. How about 2? It's amazing. But I think there's something we have to look at. Why LaMelo may be fun and exciting and flashy and different, but he has no chance to be a dominant NBA player. 2 things that are really obvious, and that's coming up next.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio, FS1, and the iHeartRadio app.
I knew they were going to kill him. Police and FBI.
This is Fight Night, a new podcast from iHeartRadio. This is the story about 2 guys from opposite sides of the street. A hustler blamed for robbing the most dangerous gangsters in the country.
This is like issued a death warrant for me for something that I don't even know anything about.
And the cop who tried to save his life.
They thought he had robbed the deadliest man in this country. Guys who would not hesitate to blow your head off.
In 1970, Muhammad Ali triumphantly returned to the ring. At the hustlers' party that followed, gangsters from around the country were robbed of $1 million. This story from Atlanta, Georgia, has been reported for 50 years. But now, for the first time, you're going to hear what really happened from the people who lived it. Listen and follow Fight Night on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
You know exactly where you were when the Golden State Killer was arrested. You still pay for cable to get Lifetime. You're a moderator on the Zodiac Killer subreddit. You're basically a seasoned detective, and you're in search of a new challenge. Enter Solve, the hit podcast that puts you at the center of the investigation. Each week on Solve, you will untangle a case that has pushed detectives to their limits. Solve is like no other murder mystery podcast. You'll piece together evidence from interrogations, crime scenes, and witness testimony to track down killers hiding in plain sight. Your cases are waiting for you. New episodes of Solve are available now on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. 1 crime, 4 suspects. Can you solve it?
RecTech Grill, more than a grill, it's a lifestyle. Check it out, recteq.com. Built by grillers for grillers. 6-year warranty. That's a long warranty in any business. Cars are only on warranty for a couple years. 6-year warranty. RecTech Grills. So, if you've never gone to an NBA game, it's sometimes surprising how physical the league is. And I've always said I love Chris Paul. Chris Paul was physical. Michael Jordan was physical. Michael got tackled for 7 years. You just don't understand when you watch the Lakers and the Miami Heat in the finals, as Joy and I discussed. The Lakers' older players, Rondo and LeBron and AD, they intimidated Miami. They just leaned on them and pushed them. That wasn't about who has the better passers and shooters. That was just men pushing around kids. That's why young teams almost I can't remember the last young team that won an NBA championship. I mean, seriously, you're talking about men versus boys. And so LaMelo Ball gets drafted by Michael Jordan in Charlotte, and he's going to be wildly entertaining. I mean, Lonzo hasn't become what we thought. But LaMelo, I think, is a little bit better shooter, but not a very good shooter. Lonzo's a terrible shooter. So I was shocked last night going on Twitter, which isn't real life, but sometimes does offer some context, and how many people were like, "Oh, he's going to be a star!" Well, no, he has no chance to be a fundamental game changer in the NBA, and it's nothing against the Ball family. I've brought the dad on many times. I think he's wildly entertaining, goofy, and I like Lonzo, and I think LaMelo's going to be fun and entertaining. But go look at the most important winningest players in the NBA last 30 years. And I wrote them down. Magic, Bird, Shaq, Kobe, LeBron, Steph, Duncan, and that's 8. Magic, Shaq, Bird, Duncan, MJ, Kobe, Steph, LeBron. All of them are either great scorers or they have a physical presence. Magic Johnson was a 6'9" point guard. The average point guard was 6'2". He had a physical presence. Then go after the next 8 that maybe don't have the titles but are winning players and are not maybe fundamentally changing the league but are great players. D. Wade, Kevin Garnett, KD, Kawhi, Dirk, Hakeem, Karl Malone, Barkley. All are great scorers or they have a physical presence. And in many instances, Karl Malone or Hakeem or Shaq, they're both. LaMelo can't shoot. He will never be a great scorer in this league. And he does not like contact. He plays defense like kids in the burbs play defense. He doesn't like contact. He doesn't like attacking the rim. He doesn't like getting hit. He doesn't want to hit the deck. I remember when D. Wade came into this league and Michael Jordan came into the league. I watched them as rookies. They attacked the rim. And that's when you could tackle guys. D. Wade didn't care. By the way, his last year in the league, he still didn't care. They attacked bigger players. D. Wade, 6'4.5", would go right at Shaq. Go right to the rim. Michael Jordan. People were worried when Michael Jordan came into this league that he played too hard. People were like, dude, shoot jumpers. Not his style. The great fundamental game changers in this league are one of two things or both. They are either elite scorers. You can't stop them. Or they've got this physical component. Now, LaMelo, those are two things he'll never have. There's never been a guy that came into the NBA, and I've said this about UFC. By 9 years old, it will be established, at 9 years old, whether you're the kind of guy that will go into an octagon and get hit in the face or not. If you grow up with aggressive brothers, your brothers, you're playing football in the yard, they're knocking you around, maybe you'll fight in the UFC. You're not taking kids with crown molding, granite countertops in the burbs to be UFC guys generally. Like, it gets established very early. Are you going to be a fighter or a lover? Are you going to be finesse or are you going to be physical? And a lot of it has to do with your family and your brothers and whatever it is. Your life, right? Like, LaMelo's going to be fun and exciting. And I think he'll be much more riveting to watch than Lonzo. I think his game is much more TV-centric and TV-equipped. He's a very clever passer, although Lonzo's a very clever passer, and he's a big guard, so he'll rebound well. But this league has been changed. I'm not talking about guys that are fun to watch. Trae Young's fun to watch. Who changes the league? Who's a great player? Great scorer, physical component. LaMelo doesn't have either. He's never going to be a physical player. That's okay. By the way, a lot of guys made the Hall of Fame, not all physical players. I mean, George Gervin's going to make the Hall of Fame. He was the Iceman, 6'7", weighed about 112 pounds, and finger rolled from 8 feet. You can be, but not today. Not the way the world works. And so, fun, exciting, yes. Game changer. No, won't happen. It's okay. Congrats to the family. It's a great story. It's a great American story. The draft last night was developmental and great stories. Not a lot of great players, but great stories. Enjoy with the news.
Turn on the news. This is the Herdline News.
Well, Seahawks running back Chris Carson returned to practice as a limited participant on Tuesday, but he did not practice Wednesday. Seattle was hoping he would be able to return this week after missing 3 games with a foot injury. However, he's listed as questionable for tonight's game and is reportedly not expected to play.
It's injury, so I don't have any strong opinions on this, but as somebody who grew up in the Northwest, I think Chris is a terrific player, but man, he's not available much. He's just not available. And it's Pete Carroll's comment was he had a great week of practice, but I think he's really valuable to them. Like they change to a physical team when he's out there, but he is just not. They have to go out and draft another running back to this team. They really do. They need it. Pete Carroll's teams have always at their best been physical. Marshawn Lynch teams, his USC teams when he had Lendale White and Reggie Bush. Matt Leinart got a lot of the headlines, but they ran the football.
No, Pete likes to run it first. I think that's probably forever going to be part of his legacy.
That's who he is.
He would rather run it. So, he's not going to be. Carlos Hyde will play tonight after missing the last 3 games with a hamstring injury.
Still good. Carlos can play.
He's had 31 carries, 125 yards, and 2 touchdowns in 4 games this season. DJ Dallas will also play tonight. Travis Homer is listed as doubtful. They are averaging 116.4 rushing yards per game, the 13th in the league.
And with Chris Carson, that'd probably be closer to 140.
Well, that's kind of what Pete's been talking about. Like the whole let Russ cook thing came from he wants to run the ball first. He doesn't want to rely on Russell Wilson to make all the plays. It opens it up. Obviously, having a running game component is crucial to anyone. Like this is not news. When you have a weapon like Russell Wilson, you want to kind of lean on it, or you feel like you can lean on it. And Pete Carroll doesn't want to do that. But you've got to have available running backs in order to do that. So that's kind of one of the issues that they're running into this season. Also, you talked about it yesterday. Keeps your defense off the field, which is obviously a big hole for them.
Yeah.
So the Chiefs' only loss this season was to the Raiders, who they play again on Sunday night, and a great weekend of NFL games. And Patrick Mahomes is extremely motivated to avoid the season sweep.
I think anytime you lose to anyone, next time you play them, you want to win the football game. If you're not ready to go in this game, playing a divisional opponent, playing against a good football team, it's going to mean a lot going towards the AFC West standings, then you're not in the right sport. And we'll be ready to go, I promise you that.
By the way, we keep just, the Raiders won. Raiders keep winning a lot of games. Just I want to make it out there. By the way, we know the Saints are good, right? The Raiders owned them in the second half, and they beat the Chiefs. So I just throw it out there. Everybody in the world likes the Chiefs this week. I'm just saying the Raiders keep winning games.
The Raiders keep winning. They're just they're just like winning boring.
No, they run the football and they do safe passing.
Yeah, they're 6-3, so they're right there. And this is a really big game. Like Patrick Mahomes hasn't lost an opponent twice in one season since before the Patriots. He's only done it once. The Patriots in 2018. And they lost 40-32 in Week 5.
Here's the difference. You know what the Raiders are, Joy? I just thought of this. They're the Minnesota Vikings. The difference is the Vikings lost 2 one-point games, and the Raiders have won a couple of close games. They are boring offensively with a pretty safe quarterback. They've got a great running game. Defense bad with maybe 1 pass rusher and 1 good linebacker. And, but if you look at the Raiders and the Vikings, the difference is Minnesota lost 2. They lost, I think, Seattle and Tennessee by a point. If not, the Vikings are, 4-5? They would be 6-3. They would be the Raiders.
This is a really big game.
It's a huge game.
It's a division rivalry. So, to Patrick Mahomes' point, you got to be ready to go in a game like this. I'm going to lean the Chiefs, even though I know I'm going to make a big deal out of the bulletin board material of them doing a lap around Arrowhead. But who knows? The Chiefs may lean into that. The Patriots came up with all kinds of reasons that they were being, attacked in the media and doubted, and when you're at the top, sometimes you need just tiny little pieces of motivation to remind yourself to go out there and give it a little extra. So Joe Burrow has been living up to the hype through his first 9 games in the NFL, but he says he doesn't care about personal stats. It's only about getting wins for the Bengals.
Hey, Joe, outside of the obvious wins and losses, how will you measure success over the final 7 weeks of the season for you personally and for the team?
Wins and losses.
I love that answer.
Burrow and I are going to end up being good friends. I'm going to make a prediction right now. But
He's a very Colin-like quarterback.
I got to be honest with you. We will be good friends by the end of his career. I'll make it happen because I love this kid.
Well, Joe, if we're going to keep it real, which we do around here, I was much higher on you before the draft.
She was, but she's very petty, and if you have a bad streak, she'll bail on you.
No,
I won't. Joy will bail on you.
I love this answer, though. Isn't that a great answer?
Well, it's, again, people make fun of me for saying I like my presidents to be presidential.
Yes.
Yeah, we're seeing how that
Why?
works
It's
when they're
very
not.
obvious why.
And I like my quarterbacks to be quarterback heel. The Drew Locks, the Bakers, the silliness. It never works out. I like my presidents to have some refinement. You're the president of not one side or the other. You're the president of the United States, all of us. Act like it. And if you're a quarterback for a $3 billion franchise, get over the awards and stats. Who gives a rip? Win games.
Well, at the end of the day, you can have all those awards and stats, but if it never translates into wins, your career is not going to be anything anyway. So this is the right attitude to have. I mean, if you look at their 2 wins, they beat the Titans. He was not sacked at all in that game.
How could I be friends with him?
Well, I think you can continue to say nice things about him. We're in COVID, so, it's going to be a little difficult to
probably not be
to
able
get
to.
some steaks.
Yeah.
But, maybe you'll come on the show sometime.
That'd be great.
We'd be happy to have you, Joe. And
We love to have you, Joe. We love you.
And talk about your season. They play Washington this weekend, so
Yeah, I like him in this game.
that's a game I like the
Listen,
Bengals in.
here's the thing about Cincinnati. Not only is Burrow been asked to start with a shaky O-line, their schedule is brutal. They got to play the Ravens twice, and the Steelers twice, and the Browns twice, and their schedule's been brutal.
I mean, that's why they went and got him. Like this, you get your quarterback. Now it's on them next season to put the right pieces around him.
It's amazing how much quarterback changes it. Like, I never really, nothing against Cincinnati, but I don't pay attention to him. Now with Burrow, I'm doing all their mock drafts last night. Because last night I was all over NFL mock drafts. As I watched the NBA draft, I was all into the Bengals draft last year and what they need.
Yeah.
Because now Joe Burrow sucked me in emotionally, so now I'm all into the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yes, and he's obviously the top of the rookie of the year.
Should be. Yeah.
Odds right now, but he's playing incredible despite having to run around. He's been sacked 31 times in the rest
brutal.
of the games.
Don't even want to hear that.
So you can really just look at that stat and sum up their season.
And hit probably twice as much.
Yeah.
Joy Taylor with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
Huge game tonight. Kyler Murray. I think it's Kyler's biggest game of his career because now it's not a regional TV game. It's a national TV game. You're in first place. You're being talked about as the MVP of the league, which is just something that happened like an hour ago. And so all the expectations for Kyler, now he's not the pesky underdog running around in the desert. Now it's up in the Northwest trying to beat a legend, Russ Wilson. And Albert Breer is joining us Monday morning. Quarterback brought to you by Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing. And it was funny. So when he got drafted, I didn't know if he'd make it. I was like, gosh, he's kind of small. And then Joey and I have been joking. By last year, game 2, I said on the air, outside of the state of Arizona, I am watching more Arizona Cardinal football. I've watched every start. I find him to be fascinating. And there's no question, today, he is a significantly better quarterback than a year ago. He's getting better.
Yeah.
But it does feel like, Albert, after that Hail Mary now, we have put him in an MVP conversation. And my question is, are you surprised by it? Is he ready for it?
I'm not surprised by it. We've seen it the last 3 years in a row, right? Like Carson Wentz was probably the MVP of the league until he got hurt in 2017. And the last 2 years, you got Patrick Mahomes winning it in 18 and Lamar Jackson winning it in 19. I think what happens, Colin, is these teams have an advantage. When you've got a rookie quarterback who can really play, who's capable of giving you veteran-type production, and he's still on his rookie contract, you're capable of taking chances around him and giving him a lot of infrastructure. And you saw it with Patrick Mahomes the season before he got the starting job. They bring in Sammy Watkins, Lamar Jackson, they draft Hollywood Brown, they bring in Mark Ingram to help him. And we see it with DeAndre Hopkins now, who's on the other end of that play. And so Kyler Murray can really play. There's no question about it. But there's something to this part of it, too, that teams have really been able to take advantage of having quarterbacks who can play at a young age. that are still on rookie contracts. We saw the Rams ride it to a Super Bowl. We saw the Chiefs win a Super Bowl in that circumstance. We saw the Eagles win a Super Bowl in that circumstance. I don't think it's any mistake that we're seeing a lot of guys mature fast. Part of it's that teams are being more creative and adaptable offensively, so those guys are ready to play earlier. But a big part of it is you're capable of putting a lot of infrastructure around them early in their careers because they're on cheap deals.
Well, expectations for Jameis Winston. They play suddenly semi-hot Atlanta twice. Tom Brady's had a few breaks in his career. Breeze getting hurt could end up being a break as he could retain, go back, and take over first place. Or, as I'm predicting, Jameis, with a very efficient, driven head coach, will make fewer mistakes, and I think the Saints are going to win their next 3 games. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, they were 5-0 with Teddy Bridgewater last year, right? Like, so this isn't unprecedented. And, you know, I think if you want to look at how prepared Jameis is, I'll take you inside the building, Colin. He's been the backup, like, the last 2 months. Like, this wasn't like a last week type of thing. He's been the number 2 quarterback because Taysom Hill's been pulled away to work on special teams, to work as a skill position player. Like, Jameis Winston has been working, in effect, as the number 2 quarterback for 2 months, and he's been doing that under Sean Payton and alongside Drew Brees. You can't help but learn a lot in that circumstance. And, you know, he's got great infrastructure around him, too. One of the best offensive lines in football, guys like Teron Armstead and Ryan Ramczyk. Great skill position talent, Mike Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, Alvin Kamara, Jared Cook. It's an awesome situation for him to walk into. And yeah, they lose a little bit with Drew Brees' institutional knowledge going out the door. But I can tell you, the coaches there are excited now. They get to kind of unlock a downfield element of their game that's been a little limited the last couple of years. So it should be really interesting to watch. And this is a golden opportunity for Jameis Winston to sort of reprise his career here in New Orleans.
Okay, so it's interesting. I said that I think I picked the Patriots to be 6-10, 5 or 11, and I think I was right most of the year. But then they beat Baltimore. They faced the Texans. They obviously run the ball. The Texans can't defend the run. Do you believe New England goes on kind of a classic New England run here, or do you still think week to week this is a very average football team?
Well, I think there's average talent with transcendent coaching. So you do the math here. You look at their next 4 games. Jaguars, that's a win. Texans, that's a win. If they can split against the Rams and Chargers, they go 3-1 over that stretch. Then they're 7-6 with 3 division games left in a year when the NFL is going to 7 teams in the playoffs in each conference. So I certainly think that they're in a position to compete for a playoff spot right now. I'd be surprised if they weren't in the race in December. And I'll tell you, there's a subtle little nuance there that happened over the last couple of weeks, Colin. They figured out who they are. They have a running back that they really believe in right now in Damian Harris.
Yeah.
They've learned how to use Cam Newton over 2 months, and they've got an offensive line that's playing really well. The defense has some deficiencies it didn't have last year. You're able to cover that up if you can shorten the game a little bit with that running game. They're capable of playing good complementary football because they know who they are. And you saw a little bit of it in week 1 and week 2, and then they sort of strayed. They tried to become who they've been over the last 20 years. And I think they learned that, like, playing with Cam that way isn't very smart. If you talk to people who worked with Cam the last 9 years in Carolina, they'll tell you he needs a really strong running game around him. They're starting to give it to him, so I think Cam's going to start playing. The Patriots are going to start playing better, and I think they're going to be right there in the 9-10 win range at the end and in the hunt for an AFC playoff spot.
By the way, there's a story today that was addressed, the confrontation yesterday, Carson Wentz, that he's a bad practice player and the Eagles' practices are a mess, and therefore what transpires is it manifests itself into a bad Sunday performance. Yesterday, Wentz got real, prickly with the media, but have you heard these stories recently?
I think the wiring's wrong with Carson Wentz right now. In fact, it's been noticeable enough that defensive coaches are starting to take advantage of it with what they're throwing at him. I think part of it's the infrastructure they lost after winning the Super Bowl. Frank Reich and John DeFilippo leaving the building was a bigger deal than I think many people realized. They're still trying to replace those guys. They've already made a second set of changes in that regard to try and fix it. So that's a problem. The offensive line have been the identity of that team forever. The offensive line's in shambles because of age and injuries right now. And they're asking Carson Wentz to kind of lift the team on his back, and he can't do it. And so I think there's a ton of reason for concern there going forward. And I'll tell you, Colin, it's interesting. We talk about quarterback development, right? Well, because, coaches in the NFL have become more open-minded and because they're more willing to meet young quarterbacks halfway, scheme-wise, do some stuff that they did in college. we're seeing a lot of these quarterbacks able to get off to quick starts, and then comes the second adjustment, and that's really difficult. Like Lamar Jackson's going through that right now. We saw Cam Newton have to go through that earlier in his career. Robert Griffin III, Tim Tebow. There are guys who've made it past that, and guys who have struggled to get past the second adjustment. And right now, I think it's very, very clear that the Eagles were doing a lot of stuff to make Carson Wentz comfortable early in his career. He had great infrastructure around him, and now he's really struggling with that second adjustment without as good infrastructure around him.
Yeah. Hey, finally, by the way, we know Trevor Lawrence, Trey Lance, and Justin Fields are going to be really good. There's the kid out of BYU that everybody likes.
Yep.
But the bottom line, I looked yesterday, there are 7 teams, and I included New England, that'll probably draft a quarterback. Are you hearing any names in the draft class?
Yeah, so I think Fields and Lawrence have separated themselves. Lawrence is transcendent. He goes number 1. I think Fields would be number 1 overall in a lot of years, just not this year. So he probably goes second overall. And then it gets interesting. I think BYU, the Zach Wilson kid out of BYU and Mac Jones from Alabama, like they're jockeying with Trey Lance right now because Trey Lance isn't playing. And so I think that those two kids, and I think they'll both come out, Zach Wilson from BYU and Mac Jones from Alabama, have a shot, if they play well enough down the stretch and have a good spring, to overtake Trey Lance as a third quarterback. So I think there's a real race there.
Wow.
And then the 6th kid, who some people like, other people's aren't as hot on, and I think he could go into the first round. I think he could wind up going in the 4th round, depending on how the next few months go, is Kyle Trask out of Florida, who's actually, if you look at it, having a Joe Burrow-type statistical season.
He is.
And so that's 6 kids right there that I think have a legit shot of going in the first round. So we knew this draft was going to be really strong at the top at quarterback. What we're finding out now, Colin, is it could be deep too, which is great news for teams like Indianapolis, like San Francisco, like Chicago, that might be drafting later in the round but still want a young quarterback.
Good stuff. Albert Breer, Monday Morning Quarterback. Thanks, bud.
Awesome. Thanks, Colin.
By the way, it's really interesting. Remember when Zion got hurt and the media's like, you can't play, protect yourself. And Zion's like, no, I'm going to play. He got a shoe deal because he decided to go back and play, a record shoe deal. Remember all the media, you college guys shouldn't play. Did you just hear that? It's not good not playing. Like I had an NFL general manager tell me. He goes, it's hard to draft a guy who hasn't played in 18 months. We don't have any film. So these quarterbacks and these college football players who played and didn't listen to the media, oh, you should be paid. They're like, no, I got to get on the field and play and compete. They're going up the board. There are real concerns in the NFL. Like, it's a physical league. Girls develop sooner than boys. We know that. You like girls by 12, 13, they're done growing. Boys grow 18, they have growth spurts. 19 years old, 20 years old, 21, they get bigger and stronger. So the kids who decided, I'm going to come back and play college football, they may only get 4 games in, but there's tape. There is tape. And by the way, this Kyle Trask kid wasn't a first rounder if he didn't play. He's a 6th-round draft pick. Did you like Mac Jones last year? I didn't. He may be the 5th kid taken. Don't listen to the media. If you can play in college, go play. Show off. Let us see what you can do. Dominate. Even if you blow through a shoe one time. Coming up next is the dynasty over for good in Golden State. We'll talk about that.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific.
Nearly 600 years after the invention of the printing press, the most important book in the history of the world has arrived.
That might be overstating things.
Stuff You Should Know, an incomplete compendium of mostly interesting things. It will change your life forever.
Well, that's not necessarily true.
Most scientists agree that Stuff You Should Know, an incomplete compendium of mostly interesting things, is proof that time travel is possible. Because that is the only way to explain how a book this impressive was possibly made.
What?
Stuff You Should Know, an incomplete compendium of mostly interesting things, will regrow hair, whiten your teeth, and improve your love life.
That's just not at all right. Well, the love life part, maybe, if you find someone who thinks smart is sexy.
Stuff You Should Know, an incomplete compendium of mostly interesting things. Available for pre-order now at StuffYouShouldKnow.com.
Now that is true.
Ever wondered why there are 2 ways to spell donuts? Or or why some people think you can find water underground just by wandering around with a stick. Believe it or not, this is stuff you should know. You Know the podcast with over 1 billion listens. It's now for your eyes, so you can read it. Stuff You Should Know, an incomplete compendium of mostly interesting things, covers everything from the origin of the Murphy bed to why people get lost. Pre-order at StuffYouShouldKnow.com or wherever books are sold.
Thursday night is monster. It's huge. You win, your team owns the tiebreaker against Seattle in the NFC West, but your last matchup with them this year, they didn't even hit you once.
I don't really pay attention to those numbers because I know the type of guys they have over there. I know the guy I've played against them. They have great players, so for us to go out there in Seattle and try to get a win is going to be tough, but we got the guys to do it.
Probably one of the better, more entertaining Thursday night games in the history of that franchise. Two just relentlessly competitive, wildly entertaining players. So can't wait for that tonight. So a Warriors guard, Klay Thompson, one of the really good kids in the league. I know Michael Thompson's his dad. I've known for years. He's just a wonderful guy, great family. Klay Thompson got hurt last night at a workout. A lot of concerns that it's pretty serious. Could be ACL, calf popped. Don't know, not guessing, not predicting. Fingers crossed for Klay Thompson. But if he does have a torn ACL, I do believe the Warriors dynasty and the Warriors run is officially over. Steph Curry and Klay Thompson are called the Splash Brothers. They're not winning titles with one splash. And this goes to something I've always believed and I've never been very good at, but enjoy the great moments. They're fleeting. They don't last. If you look at the history of dynasties in this country with Tim Duncan and Tom Brady and LeBron and almost all of our great dynasties, they have only one thing in common. The stars in their prime were overwhelmingly healthy. And if you really look at what the Warriors are today, Steph is now 33 and pretty darn brittle. Klay can't stay healthy if this is an ACL. Draymond's past his prime. Andrew Wiggins is talented but largely a trade piece. And James Wiseman, who I thought was the best player in the draft, is fun, but he's a kid, and that's not going to win you playoff series. So LeBron, for the 12th, 13th year in a row, will again be the lead dog in the NBA, and so will the Lakers, and it's because, overwhelmingly, LeBron's never hurt. He's just always ready to go. And by the way, the key to the success this year for the Lakers wasn't just LeBron. He was there the year before. It was AD, who had been hurt, and finally this year was not. That's why the Lakers won the title. What I think is fascinating about the Warriors is that what created the dynasty was health. And what ended it is probably going to be health. The reason the Warriors were able to go get Kevin Durant is because Steph Curry got hurt very early in his career, and they didn't have to pay him big money. They didn't have to pay him huge money. Therefore, they could afford Kevin Durant. And now, Steph's injury, Klay's potential ACL injury, kind of what ends it. There's just too many good, young teams in the West. And, when I look at, all dynasties have kind of a different sensibility or feel to them. But it's really funny about the Warriors dynasty. I always felt it was kind of fragile. And it was a little physically fragile. Kevin Durant got hurt. Steph's always had, injury issues. But it was always kind of also, not a knock on it, but it was emotionally fragile. Draymond and Steve Kerr had their issues. Draymond had his issues with Kevin Durant. And by the way, the Kobe Shaq thing was a little emotionally fragile. But they had been together. Remember, before the 3 titles, they'd been together several years, so it lasted a while and was very formidable for years and years. Even with Del Harris, they weren't winning titles. It was a very formidable team. But I always felt Golden State was a little fragile. Some of the guys, KD and Steph, struggled with health. Now Klay Thompson, who was an Iron Man early in his career, now he's going through it. And I always thought it was a little fragile emotionally. Mark Jackson did not see eye to eye with the general manager and the ownership. That was always a little off-putting to the ownership and Mark. And then Kerr comes in and kind of changes thing, and he wants to give Mark Jackson credit, but it's his team and he changed the offense. And you cross your fingers on this, but the West is getting better. The Lakers are absolutely better. The Clippers should be better. I don't want to play Denver next year. Chris Paul to the Suns, they're better. Dallas is young and getting better. You cross your fingers. If Klay's out for another year, there's some stuff to reboot here. Folks, Michelin Endurance XD silicone wiper blades last 2 times longer than other blades. Weather's getting lousy. Get them at Walmart only. Greg Cosell NFL meat sandwich. Next.
Ever wondered why there are 2 ways to spell donuts? Or why some people think you can find water underground just by wandering around with a stick? Believe it or not, this is stuff you should know. You know the podcast with over 1 billion listens. It's now for your eyes, so you can read it. Stuff You Should Know, an incomplete compendium of mostly interesting things, covers everything from the origin of the Murphy bed to why people get lost. Pre-order at StuffYouShouldKnow.com or wherever books are sold.
I'm Debbie Brown, the host of the Dropping Gems podcast, a podcast about the depth and potential of personal growth. No one's journey is the same as the next, but the magic of being human shows up in the things we have in common. Our capacity for love, pain, joy, sadness, togetherness, and solitude are things that make us perfectly imperfect. And I want to explore with you how we can live our best through it all. The new season of Dropping Gems is available now. Listen to Dropping Gems on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey everybody, it's Ben Higgins.
And it's Ashley I, and we're the hosts of the Almost Famous podcast.
I was the Bachelor, and know firsthand how dating 25 people at one time is not easy.
And I was on the show a time or 2 or 4, but I met my husband, so I'm proof that the process works.
We do interviews with the cast members creating the headlines.
And we know pretty much everyone, so we're a reliable source.
Listen to Almost Famous on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening to the Herd Podcast. Be sure to catch us live every weekday from 12 to 3 Eastern, 9 to noon Pacific on Fox Sports Radio and FS1. Find your local station for the Herd at foxsportsradio.com or stream us live every day on the iHeartRadio app by searching Herd.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio.
Here we go at Tower 2. Greg Cosell, a couple minutes away, live in Los Angeles. This is The Herd. Wherever you may be and however you may be listening, Fox Sports Radio, iHeartRadio, and FS1. Great to be here. Seahawks host Arizona tonight. I will be watching that game with a Stella.
Ooh, a Stella.
I'm having a cold brewski tonight with the dogs.
Getting fancy.
My dogs are just relentless. They're just relentless. You know, the cat dogs last night were just goofy. I don't know what it is. Maybe we have some catnip around the house. They got into it last night. They were just nonstop nonsense last night from the dogs.
Full of energy.
Full of energy, and I am full of energy. Greg Cosell in a couple of minutes. There's an old saying, act like you've been there before. You know? And, so Philadelphia is just imploding. The Philadelphia Eagles, a team I have defended many times, and Carson Wentz had to answer media questions yesterday because apparently the practices, according to multiple reports in Philadelphia, are lousy. People are screwing off, and it manifests itself on bad Sunday games. And Carson Wentz addressed the stories that the Eagles' practices are just a clown show.
Are my practices perfect? No. I mean, that's why it's practice. But as far as sloppy practice habits and those things, for one, I mean, you guys are out there every day, and then you guys are asked to leave, so the media's not even out there, so I don't know where that's coming from, but it is what it is. You know, I know I'm not perfect. I know that's why it's practice, and I got to be better all the time.
Let me ask you, do quarterbacks run practices? Not really. Head coaches do. The assistants that would allow bad practices, who hired them? It wasn't Carson Wentz. This is a coach issue. And I like Doug Peterson, but can I just throw this at you? Philadelphia won a Super Bowl. And I made fun of them at the time. They partied for a year. The head coach got a book deal. Nick Foles got a statue. So did Doug Peterson. Everybody got a local car endorsement deal. Colin, the Philly special was all time. It made the score 22-12. You won 41-33. Even that was overrated. Wasn't that even that a little overrated? Folks, this franchise, since the Super Bowl, is a 500 franchise. 21-19-1. They're not buttoned up. You know, it's why lottery winners, 50% go broke. They don't know how to act. They buy 9 jet skis, 6 cars, 3 homes. They don't know how to act. If you give a millionaire just $1 million, he turns it into 2. He's been there before. New England's been to 9 Super Bowls. They've won 6. Find me the statues outside their stadium. Philadelphia wins one. They got statues to a backup quarterback. This franchise needs to get its act together. I mean, that's what it is. They can't get their act together. This has been like a 2.5-year story. Infighting, coaching, practices bad, players ripping other. Button it up. Tear the statue down for a couple weeks. How about we go to the stadium and not glamorize ourselves and romanticize the past? I don't see a lot of statues in Foxborough. Yeah, it's like the difference between the Yankees and the Mets. The Yankees put Babe Ruth in the outfield in World Series rings. The Mets, it's pennants. Oh, 1 year we won the division. What are the standards? Like, let's get over the Super Bowl. You're a 500 franchise since. That's all in a bad division. Not even a good division. In a lousy division. So there you go. Greg Cosell, if you play fantasy football, if you bet football, if you love football, if you really care about football, Greg Cosell's 10 minutes of NFL meat sandwich, and he is now joining us live as he does every Thursday at this time. So it's interesting when you think of Gruden, you think of big opinions, big personality. I mean, that John Gruden is, people do impressions John Gruden, but it's funny. Trent Dilfer said this week, he goes, they actually win really boring football. And I'm like, well, when you watch them, I said they remind me a little of Minnesota. They run it, their quarterback is low risk, their defense is susceptible with maybe one pass rusher. We love the Raiders. We're not sure if we like the Vikings. They feel like the same team to me a little bit. Your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting you say that because the Raiders, in many ways, like the Vikings, play a lot out of base personnel. They're a team in the league, and there are not many teams like this. They play with 3 wide receivers on less than 50% of their offensive snaps.
Wow.
This is a team, Colin, that lines up with a fullback, with 2 tight ends, with 3 tight ends. Now, and the thing about Gruden is he's very multiple with his formations out of those tight end packages, but they line up and they run the ball.
Yeah.
And Josh Jacobs he's a very, very good back. He can work really well in confined space. He has natural power. He can reaccelerate, and he can also bounce outside. So they're really a team that's built, when you get right down to it, on running the football and then trying to create explosive plays off of that.
I'm actually fascinated. So I have this theory, and I don't know if it bears itself out, that Jameis Winston tends to be a little loose. When you combine him with Bruce Arians, who can coach loose, it is a lot of turnovers. But if Jameis, who's a little loose, had a coach like Sean Payton, and you could just get some of the productivity, but eliminate 30-35% of the mistakes, that Jameis has a chance to be a very effective player for the Saints. I cannot wait to watch this transpire. Is Jameis and Sean Payton, what do you expect to see?
Yeah, that's a fascinating mix because Jameis is certainly not rhythmic in the way Drew Brees is. Drew Brees is as rhythmic as any quarterback that's played. And certainly Jameis has a stronger arm, so he can make different kinds of throws than Drew. So it's going to be a really interesting balance for Sean Payton as to how he puts together a game plan and calls a game. Because you do look at Jameis and you say, hey, I think we can design some things where we can push it down the field a little bit more than we can do with Drew Brees. But on the other hand, we don't want to get into a situation where we're asking Winston to push it down the field too much.
Right.
Because that's where we can get a little reckless. So it'll be a very interesting balance between staying kind of rhythmic, which is not, Winston can do it, but that's not his strength, versus saying, hey, maybe we can throw some more of those seam balls to Jared Cook, which we really quite haven't been able to throw very much with Drew.
Yeah. So here's a game that is, on paper, Green Bay should be in trouble. So the Colts run the football, and the Packers are, they love the warm weather. They have a lead, but you get into a fist fight, you get into the octagon, they're not nearly as comfortable. And I look at this game and I think, oh, this is going to be a nightmare for the Packers. And then I dig a little deeper and a little deeper and a little deeper, and I think, I don't know if the Colts can stay with them offensively. Will the Packers be able to negate or slow the Colts' run game this weekend, in your opinion?
Well, I think the run game for the Colts has been a little up and down. I mean, I loved Jonathan Taylor coming out of Wisconsin. I think he's still struggling to figure out the NFL game because he runs with a little hesitancy and uncertainty, which you never saw at Wisconsin. Last week when they beat Tennessee, Naheem Hines was their feature back. He played far and away more snaps than Wilkins or Taylor. So while their run game might have some numbers, Colin, I don't think it has the consistency where you say, hey, they're just going to line up and run it, and they'll run it down the throats of the Packers. Maybe they'll take that approach. Maybe this will be the week that Jonathan Taylor really shows up. But the other thing about Green Bay, even though I think they're better against the pass, is they're pretty well defined in their coverage concepts. And I think you'll see Rivers and company take some shots down the field against coverage that they'll anticipate, and they'll need to hit some big plays in this game.
So, Joey and I noticed it about halfway to 3/4 through last year that Miami looked really well coached, very smart, certain limitations extending the field or stretching it, but they had talent. And right now, you're seeing all that hard work and coaching, special teams buttoned up, good defense, it's winning games. But we also know that the NFL usually is you take some steps in this. Do you buy Miami? Are you surprised by Tua? What does the film say about this team overall?
Well, obviously everybody focuses on Tua, and he's played well the last couple of weeks. I mean, he's essentially played well since he's been in there. He's doing an excellent job. He's a ball distributor. They're really setting him up well with defined reads and throws. To me, the story of Miami over the last month is their defense. When you watch their defense, they have become very aggressive. They put 6 people on the line of scrimmage. They make it difficult to sort out who's coming and who's not coming. They have these zero coverage looks. Sometimes it's pure man and it's true zero coverage. Sometimes it's kind of a zone match behind what looks like a 6-man rush. They're very difficult to kind of figure out right now, and I think Brian Flores is doing an unbelievable job with how he's putting together this defense. He has taken the approach that we are going to be proactive defensively, and offenses are going to have to figure us out. They had 4 or 5 snaps last week, Colin, against the Chargers. They had 8 defensive backs on the field.
Feels a little New England, by the way.
Well, that's where Brian Flores came from.
Yep. So a lot of people are selling their Raven stock, and I said, listen, I'm not going to sell Lamar Jackson because he struggled in Foxborough against Belichick in a monsoon. Give me a few weeks on this. Now they face Derrick Henry. What are you concerned about with Baltimore, and what are you not concerned about with the Ravens?
Well, here's what the Titans are going to see on film. They're going to look at the game last week against New England, and they're going to see that Damian Harris had 22 carries, Colin. All 22 carries had a fullback on the field, what we call 21 personnel. All 22. And on those 22 carries, because there was a fullback on the field, the Ravens were in their base defense, okay? What they really want to be in is their sub-nickel with 5 defensive backs, their sub-dime with 6 defensive backs. That's where all their pressure schemes come from. So if I'm Tennessee, and again, every week is different. It doesn't mean Tennessee is going to rush for 200 yards. But if I'm Tennessee, I take note of that, and I say, you know what, we've got Derrick Henry, and we're going to line up. We like to play with a fullback too. We like to play with 2 tight ends, sometimes 3 tight ends. We're going to make them stay in their base defense, line up, and have to play the run. And remember, Calais Campbell is out.
Yeah. So, listen, Jamal Adams, it can be a dynamic force defensively. You move him up near the line of scrimmage. He sometimes takes a lot of snaps at linebacker. Carlos Dunlap still has something. He's long and athletic. We assume they join Seattle's defense, and suddenly Seattle's defense is at least stomachable. It's not. It's not. They haven't done anything. Is it a scheme thing, or what's going on?
Well, it's funny about Jamal Adams. And again, I'm just responding to the film. And, that's all I do. I think Jamal Adams is a linebacker. And I think at the end of the day, that in some ways, and maybe Seattle would tell me I'm crazy, but I think in some ways, Colin, that limits some of the things you can do with him. Because he is really a linebacker, not a safety. He'd almost fit perfectly to me in Bill Belichick's defense with the way they use number 21, Adrian Phillips, who's really a linebacker for them. So to me, that's what Jamal Adams is. But when you use him as a safety, I think it presents some limitations in coverage.
Well, they've struggled in coverage. That's interesting. By the way, that's how the Jets used him, it should be noted. That's how Greg Williams used him in New York. He put him in the box a lot. So
he's a linebacker. He's a glorified linebacker.
Yeah. So, Kyler Murray has gone from interesting in 5-11 last year to MVP talk around the league. He's made a big leap. I also know that's your play of the week. Thoughts on him?
Yeah, the thing about Murray is they've really started to use the design run game as a major foundation of what they do. And again, when I say major foundation, it doesn't mean you run it 20 times, but it's a significant part of what they do. And so Murray's had a couple of games this year, including last week, where he's not throwing the ball particularly well, but they still score points. His ability to run both by design, Colin, and improvisationally is really a factor in their offense. And boy, does it change the way you have to defend this team. That's what makes it so impressive. And I wanted to show a play where he scores a touchdown on a design run from the red zone, what we call the high red zone between the 10 and the 20, because that's where he's been such a factor with these design runs. So, what we can do here is we can start to take a look at that play, which was a touchdown last week. And you can see it against Buffalo. It's basically a zone read, and it's a touchdown, but they did some interesting things here. First, you're going to see that they're in the pistol formation. So you've got Murray and you've got Kenyon Drake. But they've got two tight ends as well. Max Williams on the line of scrimmage and Dan Arnold in a wing alignment. So this is two tight end personnel, not a spread formation. It's a zone read concept, so the defensive end to that side will be unblocked. And you can see that. He will be unblocked. Your basic zone read. We know that teams with mobile quarterbacks run this all the time. So you can see Mario Addison, he steps inside. He thinks Drake might get the ball, but he's an unblocked player. But he's not going to stop Murray anyway, even if he did the right thing. So now let's go to the two tight ends. The reason this is interesting is they are now lead blockers, and they're going to block the slot corner there and the safety. So basically you're dealing with a zone read with two lead blockers. So it's really nice design. And when you get Murray in space like that, when he can get to the second and third level, Colin, without anybody touching him, then he's really, really difficult. So this will be an intriguing matchup tonight. There were times in that first game when these two teams played, Seattle and Arizona, where Seattle used a spy. Obviously not on a play like that, but in a passing situation. But Murray has been so dynamic with his legs. He's so much fun to watch.
Good stuff, Greg Cosell, NFL Films, 41 years. Good talking to you. Always appreciate it, Greg. Thank you.
All right, Colin, thanks much.
Lavonte David, great linebacker for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, joins us this hour as well. Jonathan Vilma, former great linebacker, joins us as well today. Coming up, fascinating Greg Cosell's thoughts on Jamal Adams. Think about all the picks Seattle gave up to get Jamal Adams as a safety, and he's not one, he's a linebacker. I've been telling you this for years, folks. Russell Wilson is saving a franchise that has whiffed on many of their top picks and their top trades.
Want more Herd? The Herd streams 24 hours a day, 7 days a week within the iHeartRadio app. Search Herd to listen live or on demand whenever you like.
Personal growth is challenging, but it doesn't have to be hard. When we lean into self-inquiry and self-discovery, we're able to love all the tiny little parts of us, even the pieces we don't want other people to know about. And that's what it's really about, right? Self-love, self-acceptance, self-discovery, excavation, expansion. We are the powerful co-creators of our lives. All we need are the tools to get there. I'm Debbie Brown, the host of the Dropping Gems podcast, a podcast about the depth and potential of personal growth. No one's journey is the same as the next, but the magic of being human shows up in the things we have in common. Our capacity for love, pain, joy, sadness, togetherness, and solitude are things that make us perfectly imperfect. And I want to explore with you how we can live our best through it all. The new season of Dropping Gems is available now. Listen to Dropping Gems on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
I'm Mandy B, former accountant turned podcaster and founder of my own subscription box company. I'm Wheezy, former tech exec, now podcaster, comedy writer, and I make up half of the Horrible Decisions podcast. We combine comedy, raunchiness, all in effort to destigmatize kinks and normalize conversations that are normally taboo, like sex, dating, and relationships. Make sure you tune in this Monday so you can hear conversations like these. He sets up the phone, he bends over in the want to see this?
No.
We have never suggested cheating, bro. So I'm not gonna tell her to cheat on this man. Otherwise, it's great.
Why is Future toxic?
Are you serious?
I'm just asking. I don't want no beef on horrible decisions. Maybe that was a horrible decision to ask that question.
Wait. Join us every Monday on the iHeart app, the #1 place for podcasts. And don't forget to search Horrible Decisions. That's WHOREIBLE Decisions on the iHeart Radio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Two of the most exciting quarterbacks in the league square off when Kyler Murray and the Cardinals take on Russell Wilson and the Seahawks. Thursday Night Football tonight at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific on Fox, NFL Network, and streaming on Prime Video.
By the way, Russell Wilson continues to get criticized and take all the heat for this, but the untold story, and I've been on this for the last couple of months, the untold story of Seattle's problems is the front office and Pete Carroll. They have not done a very good job in the last 3 years with their first and their second round picks. In the last 3 years, Seattle in the first round has drafted running backs, defensive ends, and a linebacker. None of them apparently are very good, or none of them have hit big. They also drafted in the second round a defensive end and a safety who didn't hit. So of their 6 first and second round picks in the last few years, 1, DK Metcalf, tied to Russell Wilson. Everybody else was passing. They took him. He's hit. So you're telling me Russell Wilson, look at these guys. None of them, some of them are, Rashad Penny's a bust. LJ Collier not doing much. Many think he's a bust. Now, if you say, well, Colin, that doesn't matter. Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. It doesn't matter. Let's go look at the New Orleans Saints. They're a #1 seed. Oh, wait. They have not missed on 1 pick in the first or second round in 5 years. Not one. Many are Pro Bowlers. They're a #1 seed. Who's the best team in the league? Kansas City. Their last 5 first-round picks, all Pro Bowlers. Oh, by the way, they got Chris Jones and Nicole Hardman, second round. Yeah, second round. The Steelers have only had 4 first or second round picks in the last couple of years. 3 of the 4 are stars. Isn't that ironic? Kansas City and the Saints and the Steelers nail the first and second round picks. Here's how the draft works. That's why Bill Polian's a Hall of Famer. You can't miss on first and second rounders. Third rounders should also be starters. 4th round on, you don't know what you're going to get. You go to the 4th and 5th round. It's a lot of guys you didn't watch play in college. But you got to get Pro Bowlers in the first and second round. The Saints have, the Chiefs have, the Steelers have. 3 best teams in the league. By the way, I would say the 4th best team in the league today is Tampa Bay. Go look at their last 3 drafts. There's a lot of hits in the first and second round. So you can keep blaming Russell Wilson in their and I've said this I've been saying this over and over again. The media will not ask the question. They're afraid to confront Belichick, and they're afraid to confront Pete Carroll in Seattle. They're intimidated by him. He's not. I have had multiple general managers say, what the hell is Seattle doing? I've had him say that for 2-3 years in the first, second round. By the way, what did Seattle, Joy, go and trade for so far this year? A defensive end and a safety. Why? Because they've drafted 2 defensive ends and neither panned out, and they drafted a safety and he's not a star. So they're going overcompensating for what they missed on in the draft and giving up other draft picks. And Greg Cosell said, actually, Jamal Adams isn't even a safety, he's a linebacker. Of which they've already got 2 great ones, and they just wasted a first-round pick on another one. Where can he play? Russell Wilson is the life preserver. And I got nothing against Pete Carroll and John Schneider. But I'm tired of hearing it's Russell Wilson. You can't whiff on first and second round picks. The Saints don't, the Chiefs don't, and the Steelers don't, and Tampa Bay doesn't. And those are the 4 best teams in the league right now. Joy with the news.
Turn on the news. This is the Herdline News.
Well, the Ball brothers made NBA history last night.
History.
LaMelo was drafted 3rd overall by the Charlotte Hornets. I actually wasn't too surprised about that after MJ gave his approval to take LaMelo. Back in 2017, Lonzo was chosen by the Lakers with the 2nd pick, so this makes them the first set of brothers in league history to be drafted in the top 3, and there's LeVar himself, a man that definitely played a massive role in getting this to happen. You may not like it, but that is just a fact. He was a marketing genius, and we would not have been talking at least this level about LaMelo and Lonzo if he hadn't.
Think about this. This is not Cincinnati. So the Kardashians are $200 million a year industry. They're billionaire, right?
Yeah.
Okay, what do? They put themselves out there. You know, let's be honest about LaVar Ball. He put himself out there. It's not a coincidence. The Kardashians and the Ball family, when you're in Los Angeles and you have all these companies out there, this is the way you play. I just saw a Kim Kardashian interview with David Letterman, and she's like really a genius. I mean, she really is. They're beyond.
Yeah, and everyone doesn't like the Kardashians either.
You don't have to
They're still billionaires.
I've
never watched one episode of the show. They're still billionaires. That's how it goes.
My daughter thinks Kim Kardashian is one of the smartest, and my daughter is into marketing, and she's like, Kim Kardashian is so smart. And then you watch the Letterman interview, and you're like, oh God, she is miles ahead of the average actors and understanding how to market herself.
Yeah, I have nothing against the Kardashians, and I totally understand what LaVar was doing. Like, you can be polarizing and still be extremely successful. And I mean, listen, LaMelo is, I think, a good player, and I don't know how great he's going to be in the NBA, but at the very least, he's going to be entertaining. I've seen him play for years now.
Elon Musk has done this. He puts himself out there. He doesn't care if you like Mark Zuckerberg. Like, it's hard. This is all to some degree.
And this is the world that we live in. Like, you may not love it, but that is the world we live in.
If I go on Twitter today, 9 out of 10 people hate me. You gotta put yourself out there. Who gives a rip?
Hate's strong. I really enjoyed the NBA draft last night, and I told you at the beginning of the show I had a realization, like, oh my God, I'm Colin with the NBA draft. Like, how you are like a draft nerd.
Oh, my high school football recruiting to me, I never talk about it. I'm on the boards all the time.
Well, I guess I'm an honorary member of NBA Twitter, so I know a lot of people were not super excited about the NBA draft, and there were a lot of stars or for sure things, but I really liked a lot of the picks. I love James Wiseman to the Warriors, and to Obi Toppin to the Knicks is great. He's going to be going back to New York.
Only guy in the draft I saw play.
He and his reaction was so great. I love Precious Achiuwa to the Heat. He's a very physical player. He fits the Heat style of basketball perfectly. Gonna go down there with Bam. RJ Hampton to the Bucks is a great pick at 24 for them. Nico Mannion to the Golden State Warriors. Gonna get to learn from Steph Curry. Kenyon Martin Jr. to the Kings. Cassius Stanley to the Pacers. I love Trey Jones to the Spurs is a great pick, and Vernon Carey Jr. to Charlotte as well. So there's a little.
It's like you've been on high school basketball recruiting.
A little scoop for you if you want to nerd out on the NBA draft. Pay attention to those guys. So Klay Thompson suffered a lower leg injury during a scrimmage Wednesday afternoon. Awful news. He was reportedly unable to put weight on his leg as he left the gym. In the Warriors' fear, it is a significant Achilles injury. He is scheduled to have an MRI today. This is the worst. He missed all of last season recovering from a torn ACL, and this current injury is reportedly to his right leg. So he tore his left ACL. This is reportedly his right Achilles, which really isn't all that surprising when you look at it, because you do tend to favor one leg or the other, and you're not completely balanced when you're coming back from injuries like that. It's just horrible. And obviously Achilles takes you out for a year, so it'll be essentially 2 years of the prime of his career gone. And obviously we were looking forward to having the Warriors back healthy again this year with Steph and Klay as the foundation of that team. So this is devastating news, not just for the Warriors and obviously for Klay, but for NBA fans, because this is what we were waiting for. Like, we're waiting for the Warriors to be back full steam. They're gonna have their draft pick. They're gonna they've made some moves over the season. It's the worst news.
Yeah.
So the Bucks have to wait until week 13 for their bye this season, and it's starting to take a toll on the team. So with a Monday night game this week, Bruce Arians is giving the players a little extra rest. He said, I gave the guys off until Thursday. We're a really tired team. We haven't had a bye yet, so this is kind of a little bit of a mini bye for us. And then Friday and Saturday night, we'll practice at night, same time as the game, do a couple different things on Monday morning to try and shake it up and see if we can start the game better. They have a big game this weekend against the Rams.
That sounds like an excuse. You didn't have a preseason. I mean, give me a break.
I mean, he
It's
knows
one of the deepest teams in the
knows
league.
his team. He feels like they need a little extra rest. So we'll see how it works out.
That's a soft. We're tie. There was no preseason.
I don't know. I'm not going to get into the habit of calling him soft, but maybe they're more banged up than we know about. And
All
he just feels like
Well,
they could use their bodies and.
I've got
could use a
Lavonte
rest.
David on in 10 minutes. I'm going to confront him on this issue.
Okay.
It's aggressive journalism.
They have, yeah, I should. They have the Rams obviously this week, then the Chiefs, then a bye. So they have 2 really tough games coming up before their bye. Then they have the Vikings, at the Falcons, at the Lions, and the Falcons again. So maybe he just really wants them rested for these next 2 games.
I do get the night practices though. That makes sense.
Yeah,
I like that. Joy Taylor with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
Klay Thompson torn Achilles out for the year. That's official from Woj. It is now official.
Awful.
Klay Thompson torn Achilles out for the year. Yeah, so that's. Yeah, I said this earlier. I think the dynasty's over. I do. I think the dynasty. Steph is now 33 and brittle. Klay's out. Draymond's past his prime. The rookie's not going to win you any games in the West. And Andrew Wiggins is talented, but he's a trade piece. And it's over. I mean, it was a very emotionally and physically fragile dynasty. It was. I mean, you had the Draymond, KD arguments, and Kerr and Draymond have struggled, and the guys were always banged up, and now Klay, according to Woj, is out for the year. So, once again, LeBron and the Lakers rule the West. LeBron once again rules the NBA, and I've said this a dozen times minimum. The second chapter on LeBron. The first chapter is God, he's great. The second chapter is he never gets hurt. He's had 1 injury in his career. KD's had injuries. Westbrook's had them. Steph, Klay now, and Klay was really durable. I mean, you start looking around this league. Embiid can't stay healthy. Ben Simmons has had injuries. I mean, it's LeBron, the second chapter of that dude's book. And this was, some of it's just genetics. I mean, Michael Jordan, he broke a leg once. That guy just played every night. James Harden, by the way, he plays every night. He didn't get hurt. Some of it's luck.
Look at Brady.
Look at Brady. Like, he got hurt one time. I mean, John Stockton had 1 injury. Karl Malone didn't get hurt. Like, sometimes it is just a break. And I'll tell you, with Golden State now out, more than ever, I love the Lakers in the West now. The Dennis Schroeder acquisition. And so, it's a bummer for Klay Thompson. But this was always a little bit of a fleeting dynasty. It was always a little emotionally fragile and a little physically fragile. And now it is official. What a bummer. Klay Thompson, great kid, great family, is out for the season. And again, this draft in the NBA now is a developmental draft. You're not going to get guys that can help you. The Warriors were thinking about moving off Wiseman and just trading him, but they'll probably keep him now. They just need bodies. They may just keep Andrew Wiggins. They got a new arena. They're not going to bail on a season for the second time in a row. They got a new arena. They want to put some people in that thing. All right, Lavonte David, great, top 3 linebacker in the NFL, arguably for the Tampa Bay Bucks, is going to be joining us next.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio, FS1, and the iHeartRadio app.
Hi, I'm Holly Fry.
And I'm Tracy B. Wilson.
And together we host a show called Stuff You Missed in History Class.
As the name suggests, we talk about some things that maybe either you didn't remember from history class or they weren't covered at all.
There have always been women in history. There have always been black people and other people of color. There have always been people all over the LGBTQIA spectrum as a part of the historical record. Tracy, we've had some really interesting episodes recently. What's one of your favorites?
The history of beekeeping, which we had to abridge because that's very involved. How about you?
I really enjoyed researching our episode on Seneca Village, which was a settlement in what became Central Park that was mostly populated by black people who actually owned the property there, and unfortunately their time there was kind of erased.
So if this kind of material sounds good to you, come listen to the show. We have new episodes on Mondays and Wednesdays, and then a behind-the-scenes minisode on Friday, and a bonus classic episode from the archive on Saturday.
You can find us on the iHeartRadio app, at Apple Podcasts, or wherever it is you listen.
Ever wondered why there are 2 ways to spell donuts? Or why some people think you can find water underground just by wandering around with a stick? Believe it or not, this is stuff you should know. You Know the podcast with over 1 billion listens. It's now for your eyes, so you can read it. Stuff You Should Know, an incomplete compendium of mostly interesting things, covers everything from the origin of the Murphy bed to why people get lost. Pre-order at StuffYouShouldKnow.com or wherever books are sold.
On the road during the holidays, don't have your car break down. CarShield.com, code HERD, 10% off. A deductible may apply. CarShield.com. So Lavonte David's around the corner. It is interesting talking about the Seahawks play Arizona tonight. I mean, it's a great game. It's a very good weekend of games. The Thursday night game, Arizona-Seattle, will be one of the more entertaining games of the year in the NFL. It's going to be a great game. Seattle's defense is not good enough to blow anybody out, and Arizona's offense is too good to not stay in the game, and Seattle has to win it. They've lost 3 of 4. The division's tight. The Rams are playing well. So, I mean, this is as good as Thursday night games get. This is going to be a great game, and not just, like, nothing against Colts-Titans. They could both make the playoffs. They're not exhilarating watches. This is going to be a fascinating game to watch, and Seattle's not going to blow anybody out because they can't stop anybody, okay? But it is interesting about this, and I've been on this for a couple years now, is that Greg Cosell just came on and basically said Jamal Adams, he's a linebacker, not a safety. Think about how much Seattle gave up. Pete Carroll and John Snyder gave up to get him. How many first-round picks? And they said he's a linebacker. That's what the Jets discovered with him. That's why they let him go, because he's great, but they kept playing him at more snaps at linebacker than at safety. So, I mean, this is what I say about the disorganization. And Seattle's drafted safeties. They don't hit. They've drafted defensive ends. They don't hit. And so they have to go out, and they have to go, give up picks to get Carlos Dunlap. Now, it wasn't a great pick, but it is what happened with Belichick is Belichick started winning Super Bowls, and he just said to the rest of the scouting department, I got it from here after January. What's happened? New England no longer drafts particularly well, especially on offense. Pete Carroll, Paul Allen passed away, and Pete Carroll, very popular, got a Super Bowl. Seattle loves its football, seized control of the organization. To me, too much power, and the drafts have been weird. They're just weird. I have teams always telling me, what are they doing with their drafts? So 5 of their last 6 first and second round picks, 1 hit. Steelers, Chiefs, Tampa Bay, Saints, a bunch of hits. So, when Greg Cosell just came on and just said, yeah, he's really not a safety. He's more of a linebacker. Well, hell, look how much we gave up for him. That's a lot to give up for a guy that's not the position you went and got him for. That's a lot to give up. But this all falls on Russell Wilson now. So, and I said this yesterday, if Seattle would have nailed their first-round pick 2 years ago, they got Rashad Penny a running back, I said the day of the draft, bad pick. Bad pick. Nick Chubb's the better pick. Said it the day of the draft. Nick Chubb's not Saquon Barkley, but he's a really good player. If Nick Chubb was in Seattle, what would happen? Well, now Chris Carson, it doesn't matter that he's not as reliable. You'd have Carlos Hyde, Chris Carson, but you'd have Nick Chubb. What does it mean? Your running game would be better, your defense wouldn't be on the field as long, and Russell wouldn't have to save you every possession. That's why these draft pick, the NBA draft is a developmental draft. The NFL's not. It's a we need help in the first 2 rounds. These guys can play. Go do your own homework. Google the Saints' last 5 drafts, their first and second round picks. Go Google the Kansas City Chiefs' last 5 first round picks. They're all Pro Bowlers. So the NFL, you are drafting for somebody to come in and start in the first 2 rounds. That is what you're drafting for. In the NBA, it's you're drafting a guy that in 3 years you hope he's really something, maybe 4. So when you miss on those first and second round picks, because after the 3rd round, it's a crapshoot. Even the best GMs of all time, you get to the 4th round of the NFL, it's a crapshoot. All you have to do is Google the 4th round. You didn't watch half those guys play. First 2 rounds, you've seen all of them play in college. 3rd round, most of them. Now, I didn't watch Darius Leonard play, the Colts' 2nd round pick. That you do get this, I didn't watch T.O., Terrell Owens play in college, or Darius Leonard. I didn't watch Carson Wentz play in college. I saw 1 game because I was told he was good. But most of these first, second round guys, you are drafting in the NFL to hit. And when you don't, you're unbelievably vulnerable. So, we've said this before. Show me the great coach who was also a great GM. And don't tell me Belichick. Don't tell me that. That's not true. He's a great coach. He's not a great GM. Pete Carroll's a very good football coach. But he's got too much influence in this organization right now. Because their first, second round picks, John Snyder's got a good reputation. He's getting influenced here. They're just not. Jamal Adams is a linebacker. They've got 2 great linebackers, and they just drafted another linebacker. That's not their need. That was not their need. And nobody understood it. It was a surprise on draft day. By the way, NBA thing. So we were saying this yesterday. It can't be that hard in the NFL to take kind of a cruddy team and make them good. Because I've seen Bill Parcells do it 4 times in 1 year. in NFL. And I'm not saying Bill's not great, but it can't be impossible. When you do something 4 times in a row, it's clearly doable if you're smart enough. I know in college football, Urban Meyer 4 different times. 4 different times. Bowling Green, Utah, Florida, Ohio State. 1 year. Not very good to really good. So I know if you get the right guy, you can do it. I'm watching Joe Judge and the Giants. 8 games. Oh boy, they're pretty good. Miami. 8-9 games last year. Oh, they're pretty good. Now, I'm not saying finding the right coach is easy. It's not. It is not easy. It's a little bit like drafting. It's a little bit of a crapshoot. But once you get it, it's not that hard. So here's a prime example. So I know Daryl Morey, a very popular guy, former Rockets GM, very smart guy, really likable guy. So he goes and takes the Philadelphia 76ers job, right? The cleaning house in Houston, he resigns, he goes to Philadelphia. What does he do last night in one night? It ain't that tough, folks. He does what Joy and I have been yelling at for 2 years. He goes and gets 2 shooters. It's not him. He gets Seth Curry because Dallas needed to get some more defense. Seth Curry's a good shooter. And then he goes and gets Danny Green, who again's a good shooter. And what do they get rid of? What we've been saying. Get rid of bigs. Ben Simmons is a massive guard and you've got Embiid. What are you doing getting Al Horford? What is that all about? So in the last couple years, and I just didn't get this. And I'm not saying I could be an NBA GM, but it's not that hard. Daryl Morey last night, in a couple of hours, I'm going to go get 2 shooters with Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons is a transformational physical point guard in terms of a talent and a size. He cannot shoot. All right, that's fine. Just get him shooters. It's okay. He can be an all-star. Just get him shooters. He shoots 52% because he's dunking all the time because he's 6'10" as a point guard. He's fine. Magic Johnson was never a great shooter. They got him Kareem was there. Then they got him Worthy. Then they got him Byron Scott. They got him shooters because Magic wasn't a great shooter. All players outside of LeBron are not all things. Complement them. So the last couple of years, Philadelphia got rid of J.J. Redick, really good shooter. Marco Bellinelli, really good shooter. Landry Shamet, good shooter. And another European guy that was a good shooter. What are you doing? I don't understand it. So when Daryl Morey walks in, and I'm not saying these kind of moves win an NBA championship, but he moves in and Daryl Morey's like, yeah, we got a big. We don't need Al Horford. We got a big. And we got a point guard who can't shoot but can really pass the ball to shooters. So gosh, let's go get a couple of shooters. And he does it in an hour. It ain't, again, you can tell me it's so hard to turn around a football team. I've seen Parcells do it 4 times. I've seen Urban do it 4 times. I'm watching Brian Flores in 7 games. Joe Judge in 8. It's not that. The hard part is finding the guy that can be the catalyst for it. Joe Judge or Brian Flores, Parcells or Urban Meyer. I've been on this for years, and I'm not taking a shot at Elton Brand because he'd never been a GM, and Daryl Morey had a lot more experience. But I watched what Philadelphia did last night. I was like, God, this is just duh. It was 3 words. A big duh. Get shooters. This is what the league is. Want to re-hit it. Klay Thompson is out for the year again with an ACL injury. So, by the way, Achilles injury. So he missed all of last year. Torn Achilles. He's going to miss all of this year, and it kind of feels like the dynasty was great and dynamic and fun and explosive, and it's over. And by the way, they can come back next year, but then Steph's going to be 34. You don't have a lot of pieces. That's another year of Draymond out of his prime. James Wiseman's just a kid. It's not that they can't be effective, but the championships to me. Remember, the draft no longer supplies championships because it doesn't supply stars. So that's not what the draft meant. You could argue the Warriors are the last team that built a dynasty through the draft. So, and they got kind of lucky on that because Steph got hurt and they were able to pay him not much and then afford KD. So this was a great dynamic run, but it just feels like, and I'm not saying they won't win games, but I'm sorry, you just got too much talent in the West. LeBron, AD, and that group in Lakers should be favored. The Clippers should be favored. I think Dallas and Denver are better teams now. And now, you can make the argument, well, we can get Giannis. That felt a lot more possible 3 months ago. But the more you read on, if you were Giannis today, ask yourself, you'd do two things. You'd stay in Milwaukee and get the max money, which is very viable, or you'd go play in Miami. Miami's way more attractive than California. From a tax perspective, Pat Riley, a bunch of shooters, a wing guard, the Miami Heat are built for Giannis. That is a great alternative. You go out to Golden State, they already got James Wiseman, he's a big, and then Steph is a little older and brittle, and Klay's coming off a second injury, and Draymond's past his prime, but expensive and kind of explosive. So to me, when I look at this, it's not only affecting the Warriors, it makes me think Giannis is staying in Milwaukee, and the only option is Miami. That's a great option. But if I'm Milwaukee today, the Warriors are out of it. They're not an attractive place for Giannis at all. Stay in Milwaukee, probably 75%. Stay in Milwaukee. If you're going to go to Miami. Great place with all those young shooters and Jimmy Butler. mdrivestart.com. Check it out. One scoop every morning. Nutrition, digestive enzymes. Check it out. mdrivestart.com.
Ever wondered why there are two ways to spell donuts? Or why some people think you can find water underground just by wandering around with a stick? Believe it or not, this is stuff you should know. You know the podcast with over 1 billion listens. It's now for your eyes, so you can read it. Stuff You Should Know, an incomplete compendium of mostly interesting things, covers everything from the origin of the Murphy bed to why people get lost. Pre-order at StuffYouShouldKnow.com or wherever books are sold.
I'm Debbie Brown, the host of the Dropping Gems podcast, a podcast about the depth and potential of personal growth. No one's journey is the same as the next, but the magic of being human shows up in the things we have in common. Our capacity for love, pain, joy, sadness, togetherness, and solitude are things that make us perfectly imperfect, and I want to explore with you how we can live our best through it all. The new season of Dropping Gems is available now. Listen to Dropping Gems on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey everybody, this is Jill Scott, and I am pleased to introduce you to J.Ill, the podcast. I am joined by my amazing, brilliant girlfriends, Laia St. Clair.
What up, though?
And Aja Graydon Dantzler.
Hey, y'all.
We are going to be talking about a lot of amazing things like individuality,
family, and blackness.
Listen when you're on your long drive home. Listen when you're shopping at the grocery store. But listen to J.Ill, the podcast, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Holly Fry. And I'm Tracy V. Wilson. And together we host a podcast called Stuff You Missed in History Class, which, as you may suspect by the name, covers some topics that you might not have learned about in school. Maybe you didn't personally miss it, maybe it just wasn't covered. So we talk about lots of women, lots of people of color, lots of people who fit under the LGBTQIA umbrella. We publish episodes every Monday and Wednesday with a mini-sode on Friday and a classic every Saturday. And you can find us on the iHeartRadio app, at Apple Podcasts, or wherever it is you listen.
Thanks for listening to the Herd Podcast. Be sure to catch us live every weekday from 12 to 3 Eastern, 9 to noon Pacific on Fox Sports Radio and FS1. Find your local station for the Herd at foxsportsradio.com or stream us live every day on the iHeartRadio app by searching Herd.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio.
Here we go. It's hour 3. We are live in Los Angeles. This is the Herd. Wherever you may be and however you may be listening. We're on Fox Sports Radio. 250 affiliates. iHeartRadio, FS1 right here. Joy Taylor is joining me. NBA draft last night. That's okay. Whatever. Joy loves the NBA draft. I'm an NFL draft guy. Love the NFL draft.
Love the NFL draft.
All night long. I can go. Last night I got my iPad, whatevs, and I had NFL mock drafts, and then I had NBA draft, and I was as close to heaven as I can be. I love mock drafts. I think it is. I like building stuff.
Yeah.
So I like looking at teams and think, okay, let's get a right tackle, let's get a Sam linebacker, and I just think, I don't know why it is. I have a buddy years ago that lives in Los Angeles. He goes, when I first listened to you, he goes, I didn't know anybody that watched the NFL draft. And he said, I started listening to you about 10, 12 years ago. I'm like, God, this guy's obsessed. And he goes, I got to be honest with you. I gave it a look one weekend. I'm like, oh, I get it. I get what you're into with the draft. Like, you're just building your team, like your own fantasy football guy.
Well, also, like, yes, and the draft is hope. And it's, it's all new, and you like the fit, and everyone loves their pick, and
right.
You don't know what they could develop into, and who's going to be their vet.
And
it's fun.
And sometimes there are surprises. So years ago, Lavonte David played at Nebraska, and he didn't go in the first round. He went in the second round. Since he was drafted, he's the only player in the NFL that has over 20 sacks, over 1,000 tackles, and over 100 tackles for losses since entering the league in the last 8 years. So, now he was a second-round pick. He wasn't a fourth-rounder or fifth-rounder, but Lavonte David, the Bucs' incredible linebacker, is now joining us live from Tampa, a place I used to be a sportscaster. We were just talking about the NBA draft last night. So you went to Nebraska, and do you remember draft day? Were you nervous? How'd it go for you and your family?
Yeah, I remember draft day. Draft day was a real, one of those days where you'll obviously never forget. I was hearing a lot of buzz that I might go the first day, first round. So I had a little hopes for myself going the first day, but for sure I felt like I was going the second day, whether it's second round, third round, and then I just had a big family gathering. My family was over, and we were just waiting for my moment to get called, my name to get called, and it ended up happening, man. I just remember I just ran over to my mom and I hugged her. I gave her a big hug, and just a feeling that she would never forget.
Yeah, it changed your life, by the way. That's what's so great about the draft. You take young kids, you play high school football, and none of us have any money when we're 17, 18, 19, and suddenly you're a millionaire, and it's a pretty amazing thing. Now Tampa's had talent, Lavonte. You guys have had talent for years. That's not the issue. It's been kind of getting the quarterback right, cutting down on the mistakes. Is this the most talented team you've ever been on in Tampa?
I would think so. I'm trying to think. Like you said, we have a lot of talent that came through here. We just wasn't able to put it all together. But from this year, the main thing is just like you said, just getting rid of those mistakes. Whether it's penalties or just causing each other on the offensive side of the ball or the defensive side of the ball. But now I feel like we were able to put that together because it's something that we really focus on. And as far as talent wise, man, I think we probably have the best talent from top down on each position, and it's really fun to be a part of. I mean, guys are really talented, but they also just know the game of football, so that's the main thing as well.
Well, so do you. You're a very instinctive player. So just think about this. So Tom Brady, how old are you today? Are you 30?
30.
Okay. So Brady is 43. So he was graduating high school, and you were just going into kindergarten? How many years of high school are there? High school, junior high. Yeah, kindergarten, literally. So he was out of high school, and you were just going into school for the first time. So Brady's 43, you're 13 years younger. When he came into the locker room, did he have a presence? Was it different having a guy that could be a coach as your quarterback?
Oh, man, the presence was there when we talked on the phone. I couldn't believe it. I'm talking to Tom Brady right here. This is, a legend. This is a legend. He calling me, wanting to talk to me, and it was incredible. But the main thing was he just wanted to get across. It's just like, he's fun. He's happy to come and join our locker room. He's happy to be a part of it. And he said it's going to be a fun year. And it's just been awesome just watching him, the way he move around, the way he carry himself. A guy with that much, caliber, that type of caliber guy, he's just want to be treated like the guys, and that's exactly how we treat him. And he's very appreciative of it. But sometimes you kind of get you kind of low away from that. It's like, yo, this is Tom Brady. We got Tom Brady on our team. But at the same time, he come here and trying to get the job done. At the same time, we know why he's here. He's here to help us win football games, and so far we've been doing that.
So when you bring Antonio Brown on, he's obviously wildly talented. So let's go back to Antonio Brown's first practice with the Buccaneers. I mean, we know Mike Evans, we know Chris Godwin, we know Gronk, we know, but his first practice, was there a play or a moment initially where you're like, whoa, this guy can play?
Yeah, I mean, you always, every time you talk about Antonio Brown, you always hear he's a hard worker. He's a guy who takes practice, real serious. He's always full speed in practice. So I'm like, I've been hearing it a lot, so I really want to see it. I want to see it, and I can't wait till he get out on the field. So we down in walkthrough, and it's a walkthrough period, and he's running full speed. I'm like, oh, that's what you're gonna get. That's the guy you're gonna get. And like every time he catches the ball, he's running all the way to the end zone, and everything is like basically like game mode. He's catching the ball on the sideline. He's doing his Tony toe tap thing. He's celebrating. He's out there having fun. That's just something you love to see, because when you see it after you hear about it and you actually see it, like, man, you understand why he's one of the great receivers in this game.
So now I got to ask a question. So Joy just did a story where Bruce Arians said, I'm giving the guys some days off. My team is tired. And I said, tired? You didn't even have a preseason. You're the deepest team in the league. So explain to me, Bruce Arians said we're worn out. Is it because of all these primetime games?
I want to say, I mean, you got some guys, here and there that may need a little extra time or whatever to get their bodies back together. You got some guys to recover from some nicks and bruises in there. But, Coach, he threw us a bone. We got some veteran guys on the team who, kind of, he's look out for a little bit. So kind of threw us a bone. He showed love. And me, obviously being a football player, I'm going to take that.
Yeah.
We all know it's a long season. And our bye week not coming up until I don't know when exactly, but a couple weeks from now. So it's cool to get a little couple days, here and there. So he showed a little love.
Finally, Tom Brady may be great and everything, but about 3 weeks ago, he is just yelling and screaming and getting all worked up. And I thought, oh, brother, Tom Brady, you could get away with that in New England, but these guys don't know you. After he yelled at everybody, the following week, you guys came out and played really, really good football. So go back to the week of practice after Tom just got all worked up in Chicago. What were the next 5 practices like?
Yeah, that right there was the first time I saw it, and obviously me, first time seeing him, I'm shocked. I'm shocked. I'm like, dang, he's fiery. He obviously pissed off. So all he did was, when we was in the locker room, walking to the locker room after the game, said, we're gonna be better. Give everybody a handshake. We're gonna be better. We're gonna be better. And that following week was one of the best weeks of practice that we had. Obviously, we was playing against a great football team coming up, but just the attention to detail, the level of focus, the way guys was flying around, the level of everybody just focusing on honing in what they're supposed to do. Because, obviously, and it showed that following week, so we didn't have no penalties in that game. And
that's
that game
right.
Before, where he was obviously, pissed off about, we had, I want to say 12 or 13. So that was obviously something we fixed throughout the week. And once you see when everybody's focused, everybody's locked in. And unfortunately, that's what it had to take for him to get fired up and yell at people to be able to do that. But, so far, we've been trying to stay on that same path.
Yeah, no, you're right. They didn't have penalties for next couple of weeks after that. Lavonte David, the pride of the Nebraska Cornhuskers, a great NFL player on his way to a remarkable career, and I appreciate you stopping by the show, bud.
Appreciate you guys for having me. Thank you, man.
Lavonte David, he is a rock star in Tampa on that defense. Todd Bowles, great defensive coordinator as well. Jonathan Vilma is going to stop by. If you've not heard, Klay Thompson torn Achilles. He'll be out again this year, which is really rough news for the Warriors, who had it was about a 5-6 year run of being the best, most exhilarating team, and really a generationally unique team. They kind of changed basketball. They really did change basketball. So it kind of shifted from a mid-range game and a center game to a three-point shooting game, and they were at the forefront of it. But KD left. Steph is getting older. Draymond's out of his prime. Wiggins is a trade piece. Klay now for the second straight year is out for the year. So it's the dynasty part is absolutely over, because you're not going to build it up quickly in the Western Conference through the draft. You can hope for free agency, but Giannis this morning, to me, you scratch off the Warriors. If I'm a Milwaukee Buck fan, I actually take a sigh of relief today, because I take the Warriors. Okay, that's one team Giannis won't go to. To me, it feels like 75-80% Bucks today. Maybe the Heat. Pat Riley's the Nick Saban of NBA. He's a great recruiter. Miami has a shot. And I would look at Miami. But Warriors are off the list to me as of this morning. Nobody's fault. It's just the way it happened. Jonathan Vilma around the corner.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific.
Legendary artists, musical icons, recognized for decades of impact, influence, and bringing the house down. Each year, some of the most outstanding artists of our time are honored at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony. And now we've teamed up with iHeartRadio to take you inside those memorable nights with a brand new podcast series, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Induction Vault. You'll hear humble, impassioned, and inspiring speeches from these amazing inductees and the artists who were on hand to honor them. Catch 4 premiere episodes starting Friday, November 6th, featuring the inductions of the Beatles, Stevie Nicks, the Eagles, and NWA. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Induction Vault. Available now with new episodes every Friday on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Personal growth is challenging, but it doesn't have to be hard. When we lean into self-inquiry and self-discovery, we're able to love all the tiny little parts of us, even the pieces we don't want other people to know about. And that's what it's really about, right? Self-love, self-acceptance, self-discovery, excavation, expansion. We are the powerful co-creators of our lives. All we need are the tools to get there. I'm Debbie Brown, the host of the Dropping Gems podcast, a podcast about the depth and potential of personal growth. No one's journey is the same as the next, but the magic of being human shows up in the things we have in common. Our capacity for love, pain, joy, sadness, togetherness, and solitude are things that make us perfectly imperfect. And I want to explore with you how we can live our best through it all. New season of Dropping Gems is available now. Listen to Dropping Gems on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Browns-Eagles is featured in this week's free-to-play Super 6 contest, where players have won over $1 million so far this year. All you have to do is correctly predict the outcome of 6 NFL games, so get your picks in before kickoff Sunday for your chance to be a millionaire. And for top story scores and more, go to the Fox Sports app. Colin, give us your winner and final score for Browns-Eagles.
I like Philadelphia in the upset. I'm going to take Philadelphia 24-20. It's Ohio, so weather may not be ideal, but I think anytime a team gets publicly criticized, like Philadelphia is, we just had Lavonte David on, and he goes, the week after Tom Brady screamed at us, we had the best week of practice we've ever had. Philadelphia is just getting ripped on the radio. Remember that earlier this week, Doug Peterson is all ticked off on radio? I think Philadelphia, number one, has really buttoned things up this week. Secondly is the Giants are better than everybody thinks, so when the Giants beat the Eagles, you think the Eagles are no good. And my takeaway is, well, the Giants are way better than people think, so that was losing to a really good football team right now. And that's my Blazing 5 tomorrow. Jonathan Vilma played in the NFL for a decade. He was a 3-time Pro Bowler, and we're lucky enough to have him at Fox Sports as an NFL analyst. He is now joining us live. So, this is interesting to me. So, I looked at Jameis Winston video. Joy was doing a story, and I looked at the video. And I swear to God, he's lost 25 pounds. And that tells me, Jameis is all in on this thing. He understands things didn't go well in Tampa. I get a second chance here. You're really connected to the Saints. You played there for years. What are you hearing? What is your gut feeling on what you'll see from Jameis Winston?
You'll see a much improved Jameis Winston from his Buccaneer days. And, I go to the best teammate I ever had in Drew Brees. He was the best teammate in the way he prepared, the way he competed in practice, the way he trusted the process. He always talked about the process, and he was like a robot day in and day out. So Jameis Winston goes from the Bucs, where he had no leadership, no guidance, no one to look up to by example and say, oh, this is how I'm supposed to practice, this is how I'm supposed to prepare, this is how I'm supposed to watch film, and this is how I'm supposed to enter and talk to my receivers, etc. He now goes over to the Saints, and he has not only a player, he has a head coach as well, that you look at both and say, oh, okay, I get it. This is how I'm supposed to do it. And it's showing up in the way he looks. He looks physically fit, physically ready to go, and it's going to show up in the way he plays.
Yeah, I mean, look at it right now, that video. He does not.
He looks great.
If somebody told you that wasn't Jameis Winston, you would not think that's Jameis Winston. He's always been a little pudding. He was always a little soft.
Not a little pudgy, that's all.
That's right.
He had the baby fat still on.
That's right. So, good for him. Now, there's a story out of Philadelphia that the practices have been terrible. And it's manifesting itself. The team plays bad on Sunday. And it's interesting because Charles Barkley was a legendarily bad practice player, but he was a great player. Clyde Drexler, who legendarily hated practice but was a great player. I'm not sure if that works in the NFL. Do you have to be a great practice team or player to be a great team, Jonathan?
You have to practice great as a team to be a great team. You don't have to have everyone as a great practice player. I've been around players that we used to call them Wednesday All-Americans, Thursday All-Americans, practice squad All-Americans, because they were tremendous in practice. They go extra hard, rip the ball out, give 110%, and then, in the game, you're just like, what happened? Where'd you go? And I've had guys that they weren't necessarily bad practice players, and to be specific, they knew exactly what they wanted to work on in practice, and then that's what they worked on. Everything else, they're like, that's not what I need right now. What I need is to focus on X, Y, and Z. And particularly, it used to be corners on the defensive side, where corners are like, I need to see the route. Show me the route and how this guy's going to run the route. I need to see that. Everything else I'm good with, running to the ball and all that stuff. And I've had guys like that where you say, okay, leave him be. And he goes out and he performs well. The issue with Carson Wentz is that he's the quarterback. The quarterback is not afforded the luxury of being able to act like a cornerback, not able to act like a wide receiver. Quarterbacks, by nature, they have the ball all the time. They have, aside from the center, they have the ball the most. They have to have the best practice habits, and they have to set the tone, period. There's no way around it. So if he has practice habits that are similar to a position player, that's a problem. That's a big problem.
Yeah, that's great perspective. Jonathan Vilma joining us. He will have Cowboys-Vikings. I'll get to that in a second. You had the Steelers against Joe Burrow and the Bengals. So, first of all, give me your thoughts, and you can do both here in one question. Your thoughts on the Steelers' defense and on rookie Joe Burrow. What did you see?
I'll go first with rookie Joe Burrow, who looked outstanding leading up to the game. Two most impressive things about Joe Burrow was his accuracy and his ability to extend the downs. At LSU, he wasn't getting hit a lot, so I didn't realize he was, very able and very mobile to when he would take a hit, he'll bounce off it, extend it down, and throw down the field. The accuracy has been very impressive, and it's very different than completion percentage because I'm talking about leading a receiver and throwing a receiver open, not just, okay, I throw it to the flat route 10 times in a game, and those are easy completions, and it boosts my completion percentage. I'm talking about the tight windows that weren't necessarily there at LSU. Now they're here in the NFL, and he's still completing them at a high level. From the Steelers' defense, they had a very nice wake-up call, and were very fortunate to get out of that Cowboys game because the Cowboys ran all over them, frankly made them look like a JV team, and if it weren't for the turnovers in that Cowboys game, the Steelers lose. So they had a wake-up call, and like any really good team, they responded. They responded against who I just said is a very good quarterback. He doesn't play like a rookie in Joe Burrow. They made him look like a rookie. The defense was outstanding. The only issue with the Steelers right now is that they need to run the football.
Yeah.
They're not running the football well. And that's not going to travel when you start playing the better teams. Kansas City's of the world, Baltimore, later on in the year, they have them twice. They're going to have to step up in the run game.
Yeah, that's actually a great point, is that I've been very much a doubter on the Steelers. I know they're good, but they're not running the football. And if you can't run the football, that means Patrick Mahomes gets 2 more possessions, and you're not beating Patrick Mahomes unless you're limited into 8 possessions, not 10. Jonathan Vilma is joining us. So you have the Vikings and the Cowboys, and I think the Vikings are now the most underrated team in the league. They remind me of the Raiders. Their quarterback's good, but doesn't take chances. They run the hell out of the football. They're not very good defensively. Maybe one good pass rusher and one good linebacker. But I think Minnesota's a real football team that just happened to lose 2 one-point games, so everybody buries them. You're looking at tape now on the Vikings. Do you see a team that can win a playoff game? What do you see from them? Because their record's not good.
They could definitely win a playoff game. And, I look over at the NFC East and say, well, if the Vikings get a playoff spot, they're going to most likely face the winner in the NFC East, if I said AFC, in the NFC East. They can definitely win that game. On film, what I see is a team that is a throwback team. This is the first offense I'm watching, and I told my producers and I told Kenny Albert, Shannon Spake, my partners, so this is the first offense that I've seen this year that really wants to test your manhood. They are going to go, they have the fullback, they have the running back, they have the offensive line. They don't care if you have 8 guys in the box. They don't care if you blitz. They're going to test how tough you are. Now, how fast, now how athletic, can you run down my wide receivers? No. They want to see you in the box if you're going to tackle, and if you're going to tackle for 60 minutes. So I love any team that has that mentality, and frankly, the players that have bought into that mentality. It took a few games. You mentioned they lost by a point twice, but it took a few games for them to really say, okay, this is our identity. This is who we are. And you have that going in late into the season. They already beat the best team in the North in Green Bay after they lost to them in the season opener. So now you take that into the rest of the season. That really bodes well, and it's going to be a challenge for anybody that's going to face the Minnesota Vikings in that rushing attack.
By the way, you were a great linebacker. Your NFC Defensive Rookie of the Year.
No, Ray Lewis was a great linebacker. I was pretty good.
Yeah, well, you're humble. But
Ray Lewis is a great good linebacker.
So, I'm sure there was a running back or two in your career that made you miss. But I watch Kyler Murray and I think, was there ever a quarterback that made you miss? Because Kyler Murray, sometimes I'm like, is he the best running back since Barry Sanders? I mean, what do you see when you see Kyler Murray?
I see a great problem that I don't have to deal with. That's what I see. I mean, he's just so slippery, and he reminds me of not really a running back. He reminds me of Kevin Falk from the New England Patriots.
Yeah.
When I had the unfortunate pleasure of having to play him twice a year in my Jets days, and it was the worst because you have to have this guy one-on-one, and it was similar to Kyler Murray, where it was always in space. Kevin Falk on third down, he comes in, they throw him, option route, or they're doing a screen, or doing something where when it's in space, it's almost impossible to tackle this guy. And so I'm watching Kyler Murray, and I'm saying it's frankly unfair to all the defenders because you always get them in space, as opposed to, running backs, you can kind of corral them, and you can figure out everyone's fits and schemes. But, going against Kyler Murray, God, I'm so glad I don't have to deal with that. He's awesome. He's awesome.
He is. Cowboys, Vikings, Jonathan Vilma, Fox Sports. Good seeing you, bud. Thanks for coming on the show.
You too, Colin. Take care.
All right. Yeah, I mean, like Chris Spielman said, it looks like Barry. A lot of you guys are in your 20s didn't see Barry Sanders play, and Barry was more slippery. Barry's probably the most elusive running back in league history, and there's been a lot of great running backs, but there's just not a lot of. Walter Payton and Barry Sanders are the 2 best running backs I've ever seen, and it was hard to. And what's amazing, they didn't have good offensive lines, and they were still great.
Running back it's such a unique position. Because every running back has such a special style.
Yes.
Like Le'Veon Bell looks so different than Walter Payton, looks so different than Barry Sanders, looks so different than Jerome Bettis.
Or Earl Campbell, or
Derrick
Warner.
Henry. It's just such a unique position.
It is. Yeah, it's in Murray's. You'll see tonight. Tonight's Thursday Night Football game is fantastic. Joy with the news.
Turn on the news. This is the Herdline News.
Speaking of King Henry, he had 31 carries in the Titans season opener, but he has not come close to that since. In the last 4 games, he's averaged only 19.5 carries for 89.5 yards.
That's right.
And the Titans have gone 1-3. But Ryan Tannehill says that reducing Henry's usage was intentional.
He started off the season on a really high rate of carries per game, and something that's probably going to be unsustainable. Not only to get deep into this year or into his career. You know, Derek's going to continue to be a huge part of our offense and the workhorse that he is. But, you know, it's been by design to keep his carries to a manageable level.
This is my issue with the Titans. I think they're a nice team, pretty well-rounded, well-coached. Obviously, Ryan Tannehill's taken a step up. But for all that talk, which is all very nice, this team goes through Derrick Henry.
And when you reduce his carries and put more on Tannehill, there are limitations.
I mean, you lose. Like, it's quantifiable. The Titans went 5-0 at the start of the season with him averaging 24.6 carries per game, 117.6 yards per game, and he scored 6 touchdowns. How are they doing since then?
Well, great players erase problems. They have no pass rush. They're pretty sketchy on defense. So when he's running well, oh what? The defense isn't on the field as much.
And listen, 31 carries obviously is not sustainable, but 22 to 25? That?
This is when Tannehill signed that big contract, I was kind of like, whoa, because to me, Derrick Henry's not only their best player, but he kind of defines their culture. It's not a flashy, it's a physical culture, and Henry kind of embodies what they really are.
They go as King Henry goes, which is why I was surprised that they gave.
Look how big his arms are.
First.
Look how big his arms are.
I mean, he's different than probably any running back or any football player I've ever seen. He's my favorite to watch play. He's just unbelievable. It's comical. Like how Kyler Murray is so hard to tackle. The only way to get him down is to push him outside. Like that's how you tackle him. Like you just get him out of bounds. Just get him off the field of play. Once he gets some steam going, it's a wrap for you. So the best thing that you can do is try and push him to the outside. But yeah, they're going to have to figure out a better balance with that because that's how their offense goes. So Kyler Murray had the opportunity to pick between the NFL and MLB after college. He chose football and is excelling in his second year in the league. But he admits he still misses baseball.
I miss baseball for sure. You know, just being in the box, being out there with the guys, compete. I know I'm where I'm supposed to be at. If I would have chose baseball, I think I would have been missing the hell out of football a lot more. But for me, I wish I could do both. I definitely feel like I could. You know, I never say never, but as of right now, man, I'm having fun, doing what I love.
Well, football's a way. First of all, football scholarships are a free ride for you and your family. Baseball's not. So economically, I've talked to a baseball assistant general manager in baseball that said this. He goes, "We're losing all these baseball guys to football because football says, come to us, we'll give you 3-4 years of free college, like baseball doesn't." And the second thing is, you play college football, you're the big man on campus, because all these baseball guys are quarterbacks. And then you go, you're a big man on the NFL campus. It's like, oh, in baseball, you go to a minor league system, you disappear, and it's no fun. Like, football is stardom into stardom into...
Especially at the quarterback position now. You're going to start right away. The team is going to be yours immediately. You're not going to the minor leagues.
But let's be honest about most kids, and I'm one of these kids. Like, paying for college, if you could tell, how many people in America have college debt? Like,
it's a massive issue.
So it's like the bottom line is football gives you a free ride, baseball doesn't.
Yeah, well, the Oakland Athletics selected Kyler with the 9th pick in the 2018 MLB draft, so he was a big-time baseball player. I have a theory about baseball, because it's such a romantic sport, but people that play baseball really love baseball. Like, anyone I know who ever played baseball, it's so impossible to get them away from the game, like, even after they've retired. Whereas football, like, I know football guys are like, I have no interest in, like, coaching or being around football. Like, I'm moving on to the next part of my life. Basketball, too. I think it's because you start playing baseball at such a young age, like T-ball, that it's, like, ingrained in everything that you do. That if you play, like, you literally could have played your entire life.
Well, and this is a great point by you, is that I read a story about this. So to play baseball, you have to go all in on baseball. In football, you can play other sports. But in baseball, to be great, you have to be in travel baseball. What does it mean? From 12 years old, all you do is hang around with baseball players. You get a very insular life. Your whole life is baseball. Football guys, how many NFL guys play basketball? And by the way, you go to a college campus, you hang out with people, you have to go to college for like 4 years.
One game a week.
So you have a lot more time. Baseball guys are just all baseball. And so when they get out of baseball playing, that's what they know.
Yeah, it's a shock.
That's all they know. Like, a lot of NFL guys, they get their degree and then go to the NFL because you're red shirt. You go to 4 years. A lot of these offensive linemen have been in college for 5 years.
It's a very different culture. Finally, what do you know? Conor McGregor's retirement wasn't really real.
It was nonsense.
He's returning to the octagon. He's agreed to fight Dustin Poirier in the main event, UFC 257, on January 23rd.
I'll watch.
2021.
Yep.
Which should be a pretty big week for all of us. His last fight was January 18th of this year when he beat Cowboy Cerrone by TKO in 40 seconds. Baloney on Cerrone. McGregor did beat Poirier at UFC 178 in 2014 in a first-round TKO, and Poirier last fought in June. He beat Dan Hooker by unanimous decision. So this will be a very big fight. I'm looking forward to this.
McGregor will win. Yeah. I always take McGregor. Except when he faces the recently retired Russian star that just yeah, he's the best fighter.
I mean, yeah, well, Khabib is the greatest, but I don't know. I'm gonna give this a couple months. I know that you know how McGregor is gonna pop up a fight. So
McGregor puts himself out there. He's the Kardashian of the octagon. He doesn't care what you think. He can merchandise and market stuff, and I like watching Conor McGregor fight. I really do.
If nothing else, it's gonna be a spectacle.
Where's the fight at?
I'm not sure actually.
Where's
It might be in Dallas.
Why? Put it in Vegas. Put it in L.A.
I know he wanted to fight in Dallas. I don't know. Maybe someone can tell me.
Very exciting. He'll dust him. I'm a Conor McGregor guy. Joy with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
Except when he faced Mayweather.
I actually thought that was a very entertaining fight. I wasn't sure what to expect from it, and everyone said it was going to be a sham, and it was actually a really entertaining fight.
It was now I thought he lost, but I thought it was wildly entertaining. It was an event. It wasn't even a fight.
It could possibly be at Fight Island in Abu Dhabi.
I'm not into that. I can't get there. I can watch it and pay for it. I can't go to Abu Dhabi.
Are you going to be able to go to the Vegas fight?
Of course.
In January?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll blow off work, no problem.
I mean, well, I'm sure it'll be on the weekend. You'll probably, but like, can you physically go?
Goulet, what?
Coronavirus?
Yeah, it's a pandemic.
What? Nobody can go?
I don't. Other than media, I don't think so.
Well, I am media.
Are you you're gonna wear like the thing?
Absolutely. I'll do whatever I have to do.
Go back to old school Colin, covering fights in Vegas.
I'll wear a media.
I would say that you would go to a buffet afterwards, but those are definitely closed.
You know, last time I went to a fight, Matt Damon sat right in front of me. And my wife was like, "Oh my God." No, I swear to God. I go with Ann. She goes, I sit down with her. She goes, "Oh my God, there's Matt Damon." And he goes, you know what she said? She goes, "Oh my God, there's Jason Bourne."
Oh, yeah.
And then he turns
that's really a compliment, though.
And then he turns around and looks, and I literally went, "I'm sorry. It's just she doesn't know." He thought it was funny.
I mean, if I played Jason Bourne, I would be perfectly fine with everyone referring to me as Jason Bourne for the rest of my life.
Coming up next, the best soup I will rate by Bowls of Soup. The best games I think it's the best NFL weekend starting tomorrow.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio, FS1, and the iHeartRadio app.
I knew they were going to kill him. Please send FBI.
This is Fight Night, a new podcast from iHeartRadio. This is the story about two guys from opposite sides of the street. A hustler blamed for robbing the most dangerous gangsters in the country.
This is like issued a death warrant for me for something that I don't even know anything about.
And the cop who tried to save his life.
They thought he had robbed the deadliest man in this country. Guys who would not hesitate to blow your head off.
In 1970, Muhammad Ali triumphantly returned to the ring. At the hustlers' party that followed, gangsters from around the country were robbed of $1 million. This story from Atlanta, Georgia, has been reported for 50 years. But now, for the first time, you're going to hear what really happened from the people who lived it. Listen and follow Fight Night on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey everybody, it's Ben Higgins.
And it's Ashley I, and we're the hosts of the Almost Famous podcast.
I was the Bachelor, and know firsthand how dating 25 people at one time is not easy.
And I was on the show a time or two, or four. Yep, 4 times. But I met my husband, so I'm proof that the process works.
We do interviews with the cast members creating the headlines. We go in depth about their experiences on the show.
And we get juicy details that they would never air.
We break down the episodes each week and give our insight into the drama.
Believe me, it's not always how it seems, and we're able to give you the insider perspective.
Since we've been there.
Yeah, 4 times.
The Bachelor cast doesn't just stir up drama on screen. Their personal lives are always making the pages of the magazines.
And we update you every week on these hot topics, and we know pretty much everyone, so we're a reliable source.
Listen to Almost Famous on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
RecTech, more than a guerrilla lifestyle. RecTech with a Q.com, RECTEQ, stainless steel build. Things last forever. Pellet stove, fantastic. Week 11 NFL starts tonight. It's great. This is it. 3 or 4 times a year, maybe twice, you get a great weekend of games. This is going to be a great week of NFL games. The best week so far in the season. And as you know, I coined this years ago, when a game is really great and you get into the late fall and the early winter, it's a soup game. Soup and sweater game. So you put on the sweater. The house was cold last night. Our house was cold. And you get a big bowl of soup. I had a big bowl of soup last night.
What kind of soup?
It was kind of a pasta soup. It was so good.
Nice. Minestrone? Really good.
Oh, it was so good. And,
Pasta fagioli.
and so here we go. So I rate the games best on how many bowls of soup are they worth.
Okay. This is a big soup weekend. How many soups are you giving Cardinals-Seahawks tonight?
This is a classic 5 bowls of soup. You cannot do better. This is 5 bowls of soup. First of all, I get the 2 most exciting quarterbacks arguably in the league. The number 1 scoring offense, Seattle. The number 1 total offense, Arizona. Murray has 29 offensive touchdowns, and Russell Wilson, 27, have accounted for the most offensive touchdowns by any players in the league tonight. And Seattle's defense is so poor that even if Seattle outplays Arizona, the Cardinals will keep it close because Seattle can't put anybody away.
How many soups are you giving Falcons at Titans?
I thought a lot about this. I wavered between 3 and 4, but I'm going to go 4. I think it's the most underrated soup game of the weekend. Jameis Winston, remember, this team, since Raheem Morris took over, is 3-1, and the Saints are on a 6-game winning streak. Now, last year, New Orleans won these games when Brees got hurt. Jameis, remember, led the NFL in passing yards and interceptions last year, so he's wildly productive, can be mistake-prone. But this is going to change, potentially, Tom Brady's playoff road, because if New Orleans does not win and beat Atlanta, and the Bucs win on Monday night, Tommy's going to get a home playoff game potentially.
Sorry, it's Falcons Saints. I'm Ron Burgundy. How many soups are you giving Patriots Texans?
Borderline 1, I give it only 2 because Cam Newton makes it 2 bowls. And by the way, not full bowls. Half a bowl. Almost makes 1 bowl. The Texans are 2-0 against the Jaguars, 0-7 against everybody else. But the AFC East has gone from terrible to kind of interesting. This may be the last Patriots game of the year that is interesting. But coming off the Ravens win, if they win again, now you have, oh wait, defense, Cam's working. Did they find their identity last weekend? So for one more weekend, a Patriots game is 2 bowls of soup.
How many soups? Eagles, Browns.
A strong 3 full bowls of soup. Okay, so when Baker Mayfield and Cleveland have to win big games, it can kind of be a clown show. And Wentz and Baker have accounted since the start of 2019 for 30 giveaways. Only Jameis Winston and Daniel Jones have more. You're going to get turnovers. You're going to get errant throws. You're going to get some attitude. But I also think you have 2 really potentially good defensive lines that can mess things up for the quarterback. I think you're going to have a lot of mistakes here, and I like Philadelphia to win.
How about Titans-Ravens? How many soups?
This is 3 boring bowls of soup. It'll be like just if you had broth. But it's worth me because the teams are good. It deserves 3 bowls of soup. There's no flavor to this soup. It is like the high school soup.
It's like pea soup.
Yeah. So it's a rematch of the playoffs last year. Number 1 scoring defense, Ravens. Number 2 rushing offense, Ravens. A lot of running the ball. Here's the thing. Please consume your soup quickly. Because these teams run the ball, and the game will be over in 2 hours and 12 minutes. So get to the soup early and finish it quickly.
How many soups for Steelers, Jags?
No soups.
No soups?
No. This is not worth soup. This is where you go out. And you know what this is? During a Sunday, you go talk to your wife, and you give her like 15 minutes, and you pretend like you really care about what she's doing, but what you're saying is, this game stinks. It's not worth soup. You're like, honey, what are you doing right now? Oh, tell me about it. And then you go back to watching games.
Mike Tomlin would disagree. He thinks this is a very serious opponent. How many soups are you giving Packers Colts?
Went back and forth on this. Aaron Rodgers makes it 4 bowls of soup. So here's the thing, is that Aaron's a star, and I always watch Aaron games. They don't stop the run particularly well. And last week against the Titans, the Colts ran it well. Also, the Colts have some extra time to prepare. Well-coached teams usually are aided by extra time to prepare. This is also the way Minnesota is playing now. Green Bay needs to win this game because Minnesota is playing really good football. And Minnesota's going to crush the Cowboys this week, or at least beat them. So this is not a game you can take lightly. If Green Bay gets toppled here and Minnesota wins, the Packers and the Vikings have split games. So this is a way more important game for Green Bay than people think.
Chiefs Raiders. How many soups?
On the surface, you'd be like, it's a 2-bowl of soup game. I'm going to give it 4. Here's why. There's a revenge factor, Andy Reid and a bye factor. The Raiders keep winning these games. So what you have is the classic old-school Raiders pound the football, cocky, contrarian Raiders. And Andy Reid's like, we don't drive the bus around stadiums. That's not our style. So there's a little flair outside the normal game. Remember, Chiefs have won 7 straight road games. So it's funny about the Chiefs. I've actually thought they've played a couple of games in the last couple of years really poorly at home. Whatever it is, it's a great sign for Mahomes. He's been a very good road quarterback. I like the Chiefs this weekend. And I'll say this. I've watched them play several times. Mahomes is always fun in these games. These games are always good.
Chiefs don't ride around stadiums. They ride to parades.
Boom!
How many soups are you giving Rams Bucks?
If Goff plays well, I may be over-souping it here. I'm going to give it 5 bowls. I know, I may be over-souping it. I'm going to end up with, I'm going to end up with too much soup and not enough bread. And that's the worst. Where you have any bread left and you got bowls of soup. It's like, it doesn't really work for me. No crackers left. I think it's more of a 4 because I have real concerns the Rams without left tackle Andrew Whitworth can move the ball. I have a feeling it could get ugly in this game. Remember now, here's what makes it interesting. First of all, there's a lot of stars. Aaron Donald has never sacked Tom Brady. I want to see that. The second thing is, McVay's never lost a game leading at halftime. And they're 5-0 this year, Rams leading at halftime. The Bucks are 4-0 when leading at halftime. So the game will be decided at half. And my feeling is there's going to be a big play by the defense of the Buccaneers fairly early in this game. So I think the first half could be a 5-super. The second half could be a 2-super.
That's dramatic.
I know. Dramatic soup difference. The soup differential is significant in that one. So there you go. Very good weekend of games. The only 5-star for sure, really, is tonight. And I'll say this. I'm not supposed to say this. Blazing 5, it's not as good as last week. And I told you last week, I said it's the best numbers all week. And I was 4-1. In fact, I took the Vikings on Monday night and the Patriots on Sunday night. So I would have gone, last week I went 7-1 on my picks that I bet. Last week was a great week. The numbers this week were great Monday, but they've all been bet up. So the Tampa Ram number is still decent. It was great on Monday. And the Kansas City Raider number was great on Monday. Nah, it's okay. But I'll still show up. I'm going to show up for work. But it's just, I'll say this, just lower the amount you're betting. Right. It's not as strong as last week. And bettor's got to have discipline. All right. 1 scoop every day. mdrivestart.com. Nutritious shake every morning. Nutrients. Digestive enzymes. mdrivestart.com. Check out the website.
I'm Debbie Brown, the host of the Dropping Gems podcast, a podcast about the depth and potential of personal growth. No one's journey is the same as the next, but the magic of being human shows up in the things we have in common. Our capacity for love, pain, joy, sadness, togetherness, and solitude are things that make us perfectly imperfect. And I want to explore with you how we can live our best through it all. The new season of Dropping Gems is available now. Listen to Dropping Gems on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
We are back and black on the Black Effect Network. Hey y'all, it's Tamika D. Mallory and my son, the General.
That's me.
And Street Politicians is the podcast for the culture. We will be breaking down social and civil rights issues, pop culture, and politics on our podcast every Wednesday. We will have special guests as well with local activists to join the show discussing political issues going on in their community. Listen to Street Politicians on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
That's right.